the meeting to order.
I know.
Sounds like it's right. All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Do we have any purchase? Is anybody sick? Yes, is what I'm asking. And that's what they're attending online. Sounds like no. All right. Then we'll go ahead and have the roll call. Oh, no.
We will be swearing a board member in. Do they go ahead and?
Let's go ahead and do that first.
Jen, are you ready?
I am. Do you have this script to display for us all?
You want me to go ahead and share it on the screen?
Sure, thank you.
I mean, the price is great. Foreshadowing for later.
We're waiting for spring anyway, so.
All right, if the new board member could kindly raise their right hand and repeat after me.
Okay.
I
Stacey Miles Holland,
do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
I, Stacey Miles Holland, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
That I will take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
That I will take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Thank you. Welcome.
I think so, and I might have you sort of flip your sign out a little bit, so we can, there you go, Stacey, great. Welcome. Yeah. Well, you're a lot prettier than you think Rick's still looking pretty good? Yeah. No. We are ready. Okay, call to order, roll call, please.
Station, please state your name. San Mateo County. San Mateo County. Atherton.
Stacey Miles Holland.
Belmont.
Holland Kuhn.
Brisbane. Colleen Macken. Burlingame.
Don Colson.
Ola.
Kevin Gonzalez.
Daly City.
Rod Maxwell.
East Palo Alto. Foster City.
Sam Hindi.
Half Moon Bay. Hillsborough.
Leslie Raxad.
Los Baños.
Paul Giannis.
Menlo Park.
Let's see, Nash.
Millbrae.
Andrew Stone.
Pacifica.
Andrew Jazz, 12 Big Stick.
Portola Valley.
Jeff House.
Redwood City. San Bruno.
Martin Medina.
San Carlos. San Mateo.
Autumn Lorraine.
South San Francisco. Woodside. We have a forum. I do see that we have Martha Barragan online. Martha, were you joining under AB 2449 exception?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll need to go back and do that.
Okay.
So basically, I believe the way we need to handle this, and Jen, you can tell me if I've got this wrong, but we need someone in the room to make a motion to accept her participation and what's going on, a second and then a vote. I believe, right, Jen?
That's correct.
And then once we get that organized, Martha will be delighted to have you participate. So Martha Burden, is that right, is
Yes.
request participation with AB 2449 due to having usually the transmittable, communicable, cold or something like that she doesn't want to bring here, which we greatly appreciate. Thank you. So would somebody like to make? Thank you. We have a motion by Fung and a second by Medina. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Can I see your jurisdiction? Please say your name. San Mateo County.
San
Mateo County. Atherton.
Stacy Malasalam.
Belmont. Brisbane.
Colleen Mackin, yes.
Burlingame.
Wilson, yes.
Palma. Daly City.
Rodas Magwell.
East Palo Alto.
Martha Barragan, Vice Mayor.
Foster City.
Jim Hindi, yes.
Half Moon Bay. Hillsborough.
Leslie Ragsdale, yes.
Los Banos.
Paul Yanes, yes.
Menlo Park.
Betsy Nash, yes.
Millbrae.
Dennis Vogt, aye.
Pacifica.
Tiger Big Stick, aye.
Portola Valley.
Jeff House, yes.
Redwood City.
One more tools, yes.
San Bruno.
Marty Medina, yes.
San Carlos.
Adam Lorraine, yes.
South San Francisco. Woodside. Motion passes.
Great. All right, welcome to the meeting. We'll go ahead and take public comment at this time for any item that is not on the agenda. Members of the public may speak, but we will not be able to respond. So, Brown, do we have anyone online?
Gives me.
And I'll check here. Any members of the public here?
No public comment online at this time.
Great. Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. We move for an action to set the agenda and approve the consent agenda items.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Director Bootstick.
Second.
Second Director Ray. May we have a roll call vote, please?
San Mateo County.
Emilios Verducci, yes.
San Mateo County. Atherton.
Yes.
Belmont. Brisbane.
Colleen Mackin, yes.
Burlingame.
Donna Wilson, yes.
Palma. Daly City.
Well, yes.
East Palo Alto.
Yes. Yes.
Foster City.
Jim Hindi, yep.
Half Moon Bay. Hillsborough.
Yes.
Los Banos.
Yes.
Menlo Park.
Yes.
Millbrae.
Aye.
Pacifica.
Aye.
Portola Valley.
Yes.
Redwood City.
Yes.
San Bruno.
Yes.
San Carlos. San Mateo.
Yes.
South San Francisco. Woodside. Motion passes.
Great. Moving on to item 3, chair report, and the one thing I have to report, and this was thank you very much, Director Mappin, for bringing this to our attention. And I believe I see behind me the chair of our CAC, Jason Mendelson. Thank you very much. And please feel free to speak on this if you'd like. What I'm going to say is that we we're always trying to have someone live at one of the CAC board meetings. And Colleen has been sort of selflessly attending nearly, not all, but many. She has been sort of doing this a little bit on her own, and we've had a little transition. So I'd like to request that if there's any, maybe another 2 or 3 people who wouldn't mind sharing these responsibilities. Not everybody has to go to the same meeting, but it is helpful, I think, if we do have someone there. I don't know if you'd like to make a comment, Jason, please?
And you've been before, we really appreciate it. Director Alves has been there from the beginning, and his involvement from the beginning allowed us to communicate both ways, hopefully with our involvement here, which I find invaluable. And Director Mack, and I was going to thank her in my report. It was incredibly important to have someone there so she could hear what we're doing and appreciate that. Like you guys spend many hours, we spent many hours on one issue, and it was invaluable to have someone from the board there to at least see that beyond even the substance of what we're doing. So I agree. Thank you.
Your meeting's on Thursday, for the second Thursday?
Yes, is this, we're 2 weeks off of you, so what is this? Second Thursday of every month, yes, and we'd love to have you there, anyone who can see this. Well, I've had one, so we'll see how that goes. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, we are so grateful for the work that these people do, and you know, are not elected, they're appointed, they raise their hand, they step up, they meet religiously, they don't have a backup, so if they don't make it, there's no one there. So they really always try to come and be there every single time. Many of them have done it since inception for years. So I think if anyone can volunteer, there's already a lot of us that are already doing multiple meetings. So if anyone maybe has some capacity, I think even attending on Zoom is fine. You can just let us know. We can put your location. They are Brown Act meetings. But our participation is not part of the Brown Act. So our members can just Zoom in and that would be fine. So if anyone's interested in thinking this is maybe something they would like to do, in fact, even if you are an alternate and you're interested, I think we would be appreciative of that as well. And it would be a great way for alternates to get to understand. And if you're alternate, you know, if you speak to your alternate, and especially if you're going off of the board, due to either term limit or rolling out, if your alternate is interested, it might be a very nice way between now and December for the alternate to start to get to know a little bit about PCE in a way that's really, it's nice because it's not as formal and policy oriented as we have to be here with all the ordinances and everything. So it would be a great way. You could join in the discussion a little more and hear a lot more about what's going on. Any takers?
Chair Colson, I would say I'm certainly willing to go to a meeting. And I would be happy to be part of a rotation.
Yes.
And was thinking I could just ask either you and the board what they thought of potentially having a
100%.
voluntary rotation.
Yeah. We can coordinate that, not to add another thing to bring on this list. But if we could have, we could set the rotation, and if someone can't come, we can move things around and just have sort of a little bit of a deep bench of board members. I'll put myself on that list as well, so I'd be happy to attend a couple of meetings. Colleen?
I would just add that they are really an exceptional group. It's not like a bunch of citizens that get together. They bring just a wealth of professional expertise and points and views, and where they've had experience in nonprofits and advocacy. They're a very, very fascinating group of people, which I'm sure Jason will testify to. And so the meetings are interesting.
Yeah. All right, you'll put yourself on too, on the rotation, okay?
Yeah.
I think each of us could cover a couple of meetings a year, that'd be great.
I'm happy to be on the rotation too. It is have my other Thursday meetings. It's kind of a time when if I'm traveling, but if we could do. by
Yeah,
Zoom
and we
too,
can just, and if 2 of us can go, great, if only one can go, great, if all 4 can go, great, like just. We'll put a sign up.
I would trade them.
Yeah, we will definitely.
Not too many.
Yeah. So we.
I do have CCAG that day, but my alternate Christine Bowles, I anticipate taking a spot on the board. She probably have interest in. Absolutely.
We're on it. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You would too? Thank you. Very good. Appreciate it, Stacy. That's 7. That gives us a little bit of a deep bench.
That's Chuck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we tell I was in sales? Good job.
Great.
All the great things you're gonna get out of it. I promise I will bring goodies. So perfect. Okay, that is all I have on my report. Is there any public comment on that report? No. Great, and I assume you guys will throw something at me if there's someone come later. Great, we'll move on to CEO report, please. Hey, Brianna.
I'm trying to advance the slides here and it's not working from here. Oh, wait, did you just do that or did I do that?
Might have been somewhere.
Okay. Whoever, thank you, Summer. Okay, a few things to report out on tonight. We are entering another busy time after coming off a calm summer, I would say. So just really quickly, want to let you know that we have begun the process of developing our strategic planning framework. I think all of you know that our current strategic plan runs 2020 through 25. We are planning to, at the next meeting, close out the plan that ends here in 2025. So we'll do a summary of that. Staff will in November. And then we will be kind of getting into the next steps with the strategic planning framework that we're developing. There is a strategic planning subcommittee that has formed and has met twice now. That is a combination of 5 board members. I want to thank all of you who are participating and as well as senior staff. And the plan right now is that this will come phase 1, which is really just the framework, not the strategic plan itself, will come to the board for adoption in probably December. That said, we are aware that we are going to be losing at least 5 board members, sadly, and trying to figure out whether we hope that you will come in December, but we've got to figure that out because of the transition meetings that will be occurring. So we will get back to you on that. Also want to let you know that we have started looking into where we're going to live in the future. The lease for this office and the space that we have next door is up in September of 2026. Seems like a long way away. It really is not. And so we have staff leadership working on this. I do want to acknowledge Nick, Beezer, Mark Hirschman, and Nellie Warburg, who will be back with us in December. Those 3 are kind of leading the effort. We had a great conversation at our staff retreat about what we would like to see because we are now remote first. So it's unlikely that we need as many cubicles, but more likely that we need big space to meet in for this board as well as our quarterly meetings and things like that. So we started that discussion. We will also be reaching out to the board to find out what your thoughts are and what your preferences are going forward. One thing that has come up strongly is that folks would like to be on a public transportation corridor. And that probably means it's not here. But we're going to be looking at all of our options, including staying here in terms of pricing. And we will be coming back to you periodically to check in. We need to make a decision about this space by 1 year from now. So we've got a little bit of time to do some homework and likely going to be hiring some external support just to start looking around and seeing what's available to us. So just letting you all know that that's happening and there will be more to say as we get into it. Then I just want to give you all a heads up about the, yes,
John,
please.
I'm trying to sell it, but the Gateway Station, 157,000 square feet in no-brainer. The Samtrans moving in.
Yeah.
We have 3 stories of office space, about 50,000 square foot each. Samtrans, to my understanding, is taking 2 of the 3 stories only.
Our Hershman's in the room and he's on top of that.
Yeah. Good.
He has mentioned that. So that is.
Just so you know.
Thank you. That is.
Andrew, it's a really name, thank you.
Yeah.
Looking out for your commute.
And it is one of the things that we're looking at. We have board members coming in from Half Moon Bay and other places too. So we're mindful of all of those moving parts. We know we're not gonna, satisfy everybody all the time, but we're gonna do our darndest and make it a place where it really is a workplace of choice that people want to come to work and work together in person more often. So that's the idea there. Okay, thank you. Any other questions about that? So just so you know, kind of to close out the year, I wanted to give you all a sense of what's coming. You know that our next meeting will be our board retreat that begins at 5:30. It'll go no longer than 4 hours, so hopefully, out of there by 9 or 9:30. We hope. Subject to fabulous discussion.
It will, I promise.
Yeah, and it is going to be facilitated by the folks that are working with us on our strategic plan. So that is two gentlemen from La Piana Consultants, Shalini Swarup, our COO, and Yana Lande, who works with us as well. They're the two primary staff people who've been shepherding this, and they're doing a great job. So more to come on that. We will be sending out likely some reading material for folks, nothing too onerous, but stuff, preparation materials. The November meeting, we are going to close out our current strategic plan, as I mentioned. We will provide a deeper dive on our home upgrade turnkey program. Director Mackin, I think at the last meeting, asked for more information about that, the timeline, when it's rolling out. It really combines three of our departments, programs, of course, in the lead, but we have marketing is working on a lot of public facing marketing to push the program out, as well as new web pages and all of that. And then it loops in our in-house customer contact center. We have hired, or in the process of hiring, 3 folks who will be joining us in mid-October to get trained up and be ready to go, so that we can roll this out and have smooth implementation. So more on that coming up in November. There'll be a couple of vendor contract approvals. December 19th will be our last meeting of the year. Right now, we are hoping to adopt the strategic framework, but we really want to make sure that our existing board members, even if you don't vote and your alternate comes, that hopefully you all will be here. Because we also do want to celebrate, board members, big time. So just giving you a sense of the remainder of the year and hope that you all can join us. Right. Okay. Some interesting and good news to point out. I know that we've discussed this many times through this year, but want to just point out something from the account services report this quarter, and that is, as of the end of July, our customers have saved more than $27 million in rates when compared to PG&E generation rates. This number already, this exceeds what we saved our customers in 2023. So we've already exceeded that number. It does not include the 12 million that we allocated for Care Fair rebate. You might recall that in December and January this year. So that is in addition. We are on pace then to save our customers nearly $40 million this calendar year, which sets a record high for Peninsula Clean Energy. I think it's important to know that we've been very responsive to all of the feedback that we've gotten from our customers. Want to appreciate the board who took unprecedented steps earlier this year to hold rates at 2023 levels. I also have to flag that there are some headwinds again. And so we may not be able to achieve that depth of rate savings next year, but we sure will try. Just to know, we will have a PG&E era forecast that looks at what we think they're going to be doing come the beginning of the year. We should have that in October, so hopefully something to report out to you then. We do expect that they are looking at dropping their rates again. And at the same time, we also have expected significant hike in the PCIA. So when you combine those two things, things get tighter. So just letting you know, great news and as always, we're always having to balance it all, but we do what we can when we can. So just wanted to make you all aware of that. Lots of things happening this month in the community. I also want to just draw your attention to all the meetings and events that our team is attending this month. It was in my report. I won't go through it all, but we're entering a very busy time. Still wrapping up those CEO council briefings. Fortunately, we've dipped into January, but do think that we will wrap those up soon. It's been a pleasure. And just want to let you know, we have a couple of new hires. First and foremost, to announce that we hired Leilani Johnson for our Director of People and Culture. This was a priority hire for us. This person will be our Director of Human Resources and also head up our DEAI work along with our team that's already working on that. So she was the woman actually that we hired in the spring to help do an evaluation and to help us through a tricky time with a former employee that we had. And it turns out that she liked working with us and we liked working with her. And so she applied for the position. It worked out well. And then we have Kirsten Brune joining as the Associate Director of Marketing. She'll be coming in, in November. She's under contract right now. Shelby Bush will be heading up our energy efficiency program. So I want to flag this one because we don't just yet have the money through the door that will support ultimately these programs. So Shelby is going to be working with Yana and the team to complete our extensive, these things can be 400 pages long, our application to administer energy efficiency through the CPUC. This is a new revenue stream. You might recall that one of the goals we've had is to diversify our revenue, to go beyond just ratepayer supported. And this is going to be a big piece for us that we think we will be successful in becoming certified. So she's going to join us and really get that done. I believe the deadline is this coming year, and also supporting our programs team. Great news, we promoted Roy Zhu as a Senior Director of Power Resources. Roy is with us today. We also promoted Shayna Levia, who is on Roy's team as a Power Resource Analyst. She's done a great job. And we have one position currently open. Here are the upcoming meetings, and I believe that is the end of my report.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have public comment on this? Or any board comment? Okay, we have public comment. Oh, he's just getting ready. In anticipation of the next item. All right, if we have no public comment, right, okay, we'll go ahead and close that. Thank you very much, Sean. Moving on to our new, congratulations, Chair Jason Mendelson of the CAC.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Thank you, Honorable Peninsula Energy Board, Chairperson Colson, and PC staff. I wasn't expecting what you opened with, but I do appreciate it. I think you guys do amazing things here, and we're proud to be a small part of that. And anything you want to contribute, we very much welcome on the Community Advisory Committee. I'm delighted to share what occurred at our meeting on September 12th, 2024. First, we welcomed our newest member from Los Banos, our second Los Banos member, Damanpreet Sarai. She was sworn in. We received a comprehensive and thoughtful report from CEO Sean Marshall and many members of the staff, including Jeremy Wayne, Senior Director of Regulatory Policy, and Roy Zhu, Director of Power Resources, on what you're going to deal with tonight, PG&E nuclear attribute allocation from 2025 to 2030 Diablo Canyon extension. The CAC members really appreciated Sean and her staff's patience in addressing our many questions and clarifying the important distinction between accepting carbon-free attributes versus procurement of nuclear power. Our committee then discussed the 3-option framework that was presented on this topic. 4 of our members preferred the first option, which was to reject the Diablo Canyon allocation. None of our members thought it was interesting, option 2, to take the Diablo Canyon allocation and use the allocation to cover line loss only. 8 of the committee members preferred option 3, in which Peninsula Clean Energy accepts the Diablo Canyon allocation and uses the entire allocation. No one abstained and 3 members were absent and therefore did not participate in that vote. In addition, the following recommendation to you, the PC board, was made unanimously by the 12 CAC members in attendance. And I can read this in, but I think you have it in your packets, I'm assuming. I'll be quick. It said if Peninsula Clean Energy accepts the nuclear attributes, the Community Advisory Committee recommends that avoided costs go towards supporting renewable energy and electrification programs. The CAC recommends that staff proactively communicate this decision to our customers. The CAC supports PCE's plan to write a letter arguing against the extension of Diablo Canyon after 2030. The CAC recommends the addition of the following point to the letter. If Diablo Canyon is extended after 2030, we don't want our customers to pay for it. And that we post this letter publicly, or that the PC post this letter publicly on the PC website. Again, that was passed 12-0 and recommended to you. That discussion filled most of the meeting. Next, we heard from Vanessa Shin, Associate Manager of Community Relations, who announced the recipients of the Peninsula Clean Energy Government BE program. She also provided the CAC with information about outreach opportunities and events in September that the CEO just shared. We also, Kirsten Andrews Schwinn, Associate Director of Community Relations and Climate Equity, also led a discussion on our future topics, including our discussion on the strategic framework which CAC will undertake at our October 10th meeting in advance of your meeting. I also want to thank again, Council Member and Director Mackin for coming to the meeting. I found that I don't have to say that much on it because Chair Colson already spoke to it, but I think all of you that want to come, it'll be fun. Apparently, we don't have as nice food as you guys do, but I think you will enjoy hearing from a diverse group. It's just like you guys. It's the whole county in Los Banos. It is people that come from very diverse backgrounds and very deep expertise in these fields. I'm always humbled to be there and see what everyone does. And I hope we help you out as much as we try to. And hopefully you guys can learn more of that as you come. So thank you very much. And I'm happy to answer any questions on any topic if you have any.
Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Minister?
Thank you. And I do appreciate one of your.
Hold on. Any members of the public have any questions? I do. Yeah, perfect.
Can you just tell me that your group contains a lot of different professionals with much expertise? Does anybody have any expertise in the nuclear industry?
Not to my knowledge.
Thank you.
Sure. I think I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. That's good. Can you just really quickly,
That's her name.
yeah, just so we can record their question in the minutes? Your name.
Hey, Valerie Gardner.
Yes.
Atherton.
Thank you, Valerie. Really appreciate it. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, I want to thank the CAC for their continued good work and efficacy. We'll move on to item 6, which is a legislative update, and I'm going to introduce Director of our Legislative Affairs, Mark Frischman. And Mark, Fenster, is Mark? Mark? There you are. Great. Thank you very much. Okay, perfect. So we have, and you've come all the way from Sacramento, right?
I have.
Thank you. So I just want to make sure we all welcome our policy group leader. They're up in Sacramento. We've had an opportunity to work with them over the years, and I have gone up, and I'll just say you guys do wonderful work. Thank you. Mark, please.
Thank you, Chair Colson, directors. I'm delighted to introduce for an annual report, Mark Fenstermaker, who is Peninsula Clean Energy's registered lobbyist in Sacramento. A little bit about his background. It's a focus on areas of climate change, clean energy, local government policy, and state budget. Just to highlight one of the issues on which Mark worked on our behalf this year, he was integral to our successful effort to address the California Department of Housing and Community Development's plans for the new building code. You may recall that HCD, which adopts new building codes every 3 years, had proposed a change that would have eliminated our ability to provide level 1 EV charging in existing apartment and condominium buildings. As part of a team effort with many departments at Peninsula Clean Energy, argued that we have clearly demonstrably shown that level 1 EV charging is cost effective and particularly for multi-family properties. Mark helped us working with legislators and policymakers in Sacramento. It was integral to our success And as you know, level 1 charging is now included in the bill. And for that, we're very appreciative. The regular 2023-24 legislative session has now concluded. But if you're following along, they are still meeting in special session. And so we brought Mark here, as we do every September, to address the board, to share with us successes and other activities over the last year, his thoughts about the just concluded session, ideas for the year ahead, and what he sees and to answer any questions that we take. So, I'd like to present Mark.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that nice introduction, Mark, and thank you, Chair Colson. Thank you to all of you directors for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here. Opposite of what Sean said, for me, this is entering now a relatively calm after coming off of the summer storm, if you will, as session concluded at the end of August. So just looking back a little bit, it's hard to believe that the session is already over. When you live and breathe it every day, you really adjust quickly to all the changes. And we saw a lot of changes this year. First and foremost, with the leadership of the two houses, starting with the Senate, Senator McGuire might be familiar to you. He took over as the pro tem in February. I mean, it feels like it's been years that he's been in that position, but it's only been a handful of months. He didn't make too many changes in terms of committee chairs, but one to note for you all, Senator Caballero, who represents Los Banos, Merced County, she became the appropriations chair, one of the, if not the most powerful committee in the legislature. On the other side, on the other house in the assembly, Robert Rivas had his first full year as speaker. He took over last summer, but really came in and took charge, put a lot of new folks in new places, kind of installed his team, if you will, including a brand new chair in Assembly Utilities and Energy, Assemblymember Cotty Petrie Norris, who comes from the Irvine area. And we're still kind of getting up to speed on how she's handling things. She's also chairing the special session that Mark just mentioned, so she's extra busy right now. Getting a little bit more into the issues, the focus in energy really shifted this year from reliability to affordability. Not too surprising how big of a topic affordability was, but it was pretty noticeable that, you know, reliability for the most part was off the table. I think a large part of that is the fact that we've made improvements. Governor Newsom came out to one of your sister agency, Valley Clean Energy, to present about how the state had achieved its battery goals early. So I think battery storage has come a long way and has helped with reliability. We've had a couple of good wet winters, so hydro has improved, but overall reliability improved this year. Plus, we did a lot of big bills the last couple of years in this space, so I think there just wasn't quite as much appetite. At the same time, as you know well, it was just rate increase after rate increase, a lot of public outcry. You had the income graduated fixed charge come in. We had changes at PUC with NEM. So some big topics that really affected how much is that energy costing, and legislators up and down the state were hearing from their constituents on it. So we saw a lot of bills, a lot of discussion about how to make affordability more affordable, or sorry, how to make electricity more affordable, but it's not just electricity, of course, it's kind of everything right now in California we're talking about as it relates to affordability. Towards the end of session, there was a push to do an affordability package, if you will, a series of bills with different topics. Really didn't take shape, which was kind of surprising. Usually when we see the leadership promote something, when we see the governor promoting a policy package, which in this case, the governor had some ideas, Senate Pro Tem McGuire had some ideas, Assembly Chair Petrie Norris had some ideas, thought we'd see maybe 5 or 6 bills. At the end of the day, we saw 3 bills come into print, only 1 actually moved, still sitting on the governor's desk waiting for his action. He's only got a few days left to make that decision, but a bit surprising that we didn't see more come together at the end of session. And the last item on here that I just wanted to highlight quickly is hydrogen. Might seem a little off topic, but it's been a big discussion in Sacramento recently. It is an energy commodity, of course. It can have a direct impact on electricity prices depending on the rules that California puts in place. We didn't get too far along in it. There's major discussions happening at the federal level. I do expect this to come back next session, but it's one to keep an eye on. Elsewhere, the climate bond, which I know when I was here last year, we touched on, finally passed the legislature. It's up on November 5th. Polling looks pretty good right now. There was a lot of discussion about a clean energy chapter. At the end of the day, it ended up being relatively small compared to the overall size of the bond, with a focus on getting ports prepared for offshore wind development. Not as much came in through that chapter, but it's an overall $10 billion bond. And then lastly, I'll just mention, Mark hit on it. We're back in special session, second year in a row. It's the beginning of 2023. Now here at the end of 2024, the governor calls for a special session on gas prices. So there was a committee hearing just this morning, looking at a bill, 3 bills actually, but the main one, which is being promoted by Governor Newsom, would require refineries to keep a certain amount in reserve. That's been a big topic. So looking ahead and kind of staying with that last topic of Governor Newsom and the special session, he had actually called for this bill right at the end of the 24 session. So it was kind of a week or two to go in August. He was pushing for this bill to happen. It actually went into print. It was a bill by Senator Nancy Skinner. The Assembly ended up just sitting on it. It's surprising. I think it shows a little bit of a crack in the armor, if you will, that the governor's not getting his way on everything with the legislature. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that he's entering his final 2 years now. Going to be a lot of big questions about what happens next with the governor and with his administration. Obviously November 5th and decisions made there are going to have a lot to do with it. But it's certainly going to be a major topic as we go into 25 and 2026. We've seen a few names already enter to replace the governor, names I'm sure that are familiar to you. I think more are going to be coming. It's definitely going to be one of the more fascinating topics for 25, 26. We also have the remaining state constitutional office races. A couple of interesting notes that I've seen. Senator Bradford, who has been the chair of Senate Energy for a number of years, has put his name in for lieutenant governor, and that seems to be a viable push that he's making. I also saw that Assemblymember Ting and former Speaker Rendon have opened up committees to run for state treasurers. So we're seeing some legislators who are leaving, thinking about, what's next. We're gonna have a lot of new members coming in 2025. 11 new senators, 23 new assembly members. That's 25% virtually for both houses. Of the new senators, we're gonna see, I think it's 5 assembly members that are jumping over to the Senate. So there's gonna be some continuity there, but still, new names in new places. 2024 really marks the end of the first cycle for legislators under the new term limit rules that were enacted back in 2010. So when they changed from assembly members could do 3 2-year terms, senators could do 2 4-year terms. Now it's 12 years, doesn't matter how you slice it. 2012 was that first class. So they're at the end. That's why we're seeing some major turnover. Stability in the PCE delegation looks pretty good. Assemblymember Ting is terming out beyond that. I think everyone should be back. Obviously, we have an election in about 6 weeks, but I think the remaining legislators that represent PCE will all be in the same spot. Another leadership transition being discussed. So I mentioned Senator McGuire came in just 7 months ago. Well, he terms out in 2026. It was known when he was elected that he would really be kind of a bridge between this outgoing class that I was just mentioning to the new couple of groups that are coming in. There was a big class that came in the last election, and now we got another big group coming in. So how long does Senator McGuire stay in as pro tem? And then what happens with some of the committee positions that he's going to appoint? Are those going to be long lasting? Or are those going to also be kind of short timers in those roles. The other big question mark, budget. Is the budget gonna be stable this year? It was probably the biggest topic for this past session. When the legislature, the governor got together, hashed out the budget in June, they really looked forward into 2025 as well, projected another rather large deficit, but they made a number of moves to try and balance, not just for 2024, but also for 25-26. From the reports I've seen over the last several months, revenues for the state have been at or slightly above projection. So I think we're, fingers crossed, gonna come into 2025 right around break even, and not facing the massive cuts in the discussions and how much airtime that took up for the legislature and the governor like we did this past year. So, knock on wood, we're not talking about big budget deficit and big cuts again. Probably not gonna be talking about, new money and new programs, but at least we're not talking about the opposite. So other considerations in 25-26, like I said, affordability is gonna still be a concern. The affordability package that didn't really materialize, definitely gonna be on the table. We saw Governor Newsom just earlier this week at one of his signing ceremonies, indicating that he's gonna make some sort of move in the next few weeks. Executive order, not sure exactly what that's gonna look like, but that then he would be coming back in the budget release in early 2025 with a bigger proposal around programs that maybe shouldn't be, being paid for by ratepayers. We know rate increases are probably gonna keep going up, so affordability is still gonna very much be on the table. Elsewhere, we've got a number of members of the two committees we care most about that are leaving. First and foremost, I mentioned Senator Bradford, not going to be chair of Senate Energy anymore, but other long-standing members of that committee like Senator Dodd, Senator Eggman, Senator Min, over on the Assembly side. Chair will stay the same, but again, we're seeing pretty big turnover. About a third, maybe slightly higher membership in both committees are going to be changing. So new faces, new places, it's kind of always what we have to deal with in Sacramento. And the energy committees are going to be no exception. When I came last year, we were talking about the regional grid. That was a hot topic through the end of last session. Some of you may have tracked, may be familiar with the Governor's Pathways Initiative that a number of states and their energy commission equivalents are engaged in, along with a lot of stakeholders. CCCFA does have staff that are attending all the meetings and all the workshops. The latest proposal that came out of this group a couple months ago, very deliberate approach, taking one of the market products that CAISO runs across the West, trying to elevate its governance up to be on par with CAISO. So really slow step there, not in any way suggesting that we're gonna see a regional grid proposal in 25-26. I don't see that happening at all. So for those who were tracking this issue last year, just know that that's still an ongoing discussion, but it's not something that we really foresee happening in California's legislature. Lastly, you all started this meeting off talking about AB 2449. That bill sunsets January 1st, 2026. So that is going to be a major topic in 2025. When we worked on the bill last year, SB 537, one of the biggest pushbacks that we were getting in those conversations is we need to let 2449 play out, and that when that bill, if it's extended, when that discussion happens, that'll be the time to revisit and think about should the policy be expanded. So I certainly envision us engaging along those lines and seeing how that conversation goes. All right, last slide. Wanted to just take a minute, talk a little bit about process and how we work toward getting positions on bills. This year, the legislature will start on December 2nd. That's when they're going to swear in all the new members. There will be bills introduced that day. There always are. They then break for the remainder of the month. They come back early January, and then we start to see bills trickling in and then picking up till we get to mid-February when the deadline hits for legislation to be introduced. Then, of course, more bills keep coming, bills get amended, we get into the summer and near the end of session, and we see more bills get introduced, gotten amends, so that's why I put deadlines matter until they don't. They never really do in the legislature, as long as there's some political will, they can get around any deadline they want, so constantly, Mark and I, Shalini, Sean, we're looking at, what bills are coming in, what bills have changed, talking about how all these different bills are shaping up and how they might impact. And then one of the things we know we have to do is have external discussions alongside our internal discussions. So that's a majority of how we go about getting the information we need. That's not exhaustive, but really trying to gather up as much information as we can to make the most informed decision about, is this a bill that we should engage, whether it's a support or oppose or anywhere in between. Once we make a decision to take a position, we draft up a letter. A lot of times it's going to be an individual Peninsula Clean Energy letter. Sometimes it's signing on as a group with other members in a group. Cal CCA letters can be that way. California, in terms of getting stakeholders to take positions, did join the 21st century, has an online portal. Everything has to go through that for positions to show up. So Mark and I each month take a look at all the bills that are out there, put it in the matrix that's in your monthly update, try to know, do we have a position? Does Cal CCA have a position? Best way we can summarize quickly what the bill is doing, where it is in the process, et cetera. It's a lot of information. Hopefully it's helpful to you all, but this is just a brief primer on how we get from, okay, here's a bill to now we're actually taking a position on it and what that process entails. So with that, I'll conclude, see if there's any questions. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Just to add, can you go back one slide?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. That was super informative. Thanks. One thing just to remind you all, in that internal and external discussions, there should be a bullet there that reminds you that PCE has a legislative platform that comes before the board. I believe it's January of each year that you all adopt. It hasn't radically changed much over the years, but it does shift as things change in the market. So that'll be coming to you again in January, and that is also part of our process. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
Okay, does anyone have questions? Yes, are we going through these legislative session bills, or can I ask a question?
I think we're just gonna ask questions.
Okay, then I'd like to do that. There's a bill that I read with interest that awaiting governor's signature, AB 2054. And this is about member of the Energy Commission or CPUC being employed, have to wait for a year after ceasing to be a member of the commission. And I noted PCE removed support after the bill was amended. Why? I was just curious. Why was that? What happened?
So the original bill proposed a 10-year waiting period. And at that time, we thought that maybe was too long of a gap. The bill was then amended down to 3 years, which we thought was appropriate. Then it was amended down again to the 1 year, which I believe is actually where things currently stand.
I think it's currently 2. So
Oh.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think they amended it down.
Your paper says 1.
No, the new bill was amended down to 1, but if I'm not mistaken, I think before any bill was introduced, the current law was 2. So they amended it. Is that right?
I was just, sorry.
We can certainly get back to you on that.
Yeah.
But I think that's what happened.
It actually went opposite way.
Yeah,
So it started off as a more restrictive bill.
right,
And in the end, it then ended up becoming less restrictive.
right.
And then if I have one more. SB 1095 Becker,
Mhm.
Cozy Homes Cleanup Act. Sounded like a great idea. ensured that individuals can switch from gas to electric appliances, prevents HOAs from preventing switch. Also clarifies authorities of individuals to replace gas with electric in mobile manufactured homes, blah, 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 and it's dead. Why didn't that go through? That seems so simple. Why would they not put that through? What happened?
Yeah, I do recall I came here several years ago and ran through the legislative process and kind of how each committee stuff works. And you may notice that that bill, it says it died in appropriations on suspense. That's the black box of the legislative process. And we never get real clear answers on why bills die there or not. It's a mix of policy, financial, and implications.
So it doesn't come out of there again. Once it's there, it's parked and it's
Correct.
dead.
Correct.
Okay.
And no explanation is provided.
There's no actual public discussion or up or down vote on the bill on suspense.
Very sad. That was a good bill. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, Jeff Osborne.
Yeah, so regionalization might actually be a really interesting solution to some of the affordability questions. What's the probability that the governor or someone else sort of tries to reignite the regionalization talks or accelerate them in some way? If Governor Newsom wanted to do something meaningful on affordability these last 2 years?
I'm not tracking that Westwide Governance Pathways Initiative too closely. But I think there's a lot of good conversation and a lot of credibility in that group. And I think the way regionalization has been received in the legislature and previous attempts, it's gonna be really hard to get ahead of that process.
Which is why they moved it out of the legislature to begin with,
Yes.
because it was a little bit dead on arrival with
Mhm.
other groups
It's the third
strongly objecting.
Yeah.
It's a good question though. So, and I will bring it, because I'm gonna be attending the Cal CCA board strategy sessions next week. Affordability is the top of the list,
Mhm.
and I'll ask the question.
Just quick feedback. I love your matrix. Thank you. I know it's a lot of work, keeping that up. Thank you.
Okay, any members of the public? No.
Just make a quick comment on that last question about.
Sure, can I make it from there?
I'll just say that I've heard that it's opening the gateways to into California. Under a heading that's not clearly called out as dirty.
Anyone else have a comment? Remember, bumps was a comment. Okay. Thank you very much, both of you, and thank you for coming up.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Okay, there is no action on this item. It's just an informational. Next item is decision regarding,
Donna, I
yeah.
do want to apologize before we move on to the
Oh,
next
we do.
item.
Yeah,
We need to
thank
swear
you.
in another board of directors. I
we
do
have another
apologize.
director that just came. Swear.
Of course. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Martha.
Vice Mayor Barragan, I apologize that we didn't get you earlier today. If you'd please join me with this oath. If you would also raise your right hand, I know you are at home. Thank you so much. I, Martha Barragan, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
I, Martha Barragan, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies.
Oh, go ahead.
I wasn't sure I was supposed to continue.
Then you
sorry.
can continue. Go right ahead.
Oh, okay, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance, sorry,
Yes.
allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I will take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you so much. Welcome.
This is a third meeting, so my brain's kind of like a little
You did
tired.
wonderful. You did wonderfully. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Martha. Okay, our next item is an update on it's item 7, decision regarding an allocation of carbon-free attributes from the Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant for 2025 to 2030. Action item. We have Sean Marshall. We have Jeremy Wayne and Roy June. He's here today.
Okay, so I just have a brief show of hands. For how many of you here tonight will this presentation be your first time? You have a show of hands? Okay, good. More than half. The reason I ask is that this presentation and this discussion has been on a journey for the last 6 weeks or so. We started in August with our procurement subcommittee. And there was a fairly sparse attendance at that. And so that committee then recommended that it should go to the executive committee, which it did in September on the 9th. From there, we went to the CAC, as Jason mentioned earlier. We had meetings with our CBO partners, and we had an internal meeting with our staff. So we have been very, very pragmatic about explaining what the decision that you have before you tonight. So I'll beg for forgiveness for those of you who have heard this more than once. We're going to go through the entire thing because it really lays the entire framework out. Okay, so what is the question at hand? The question at hand for you all tonight is, should Peninsula Clean Energy elect to take an annual allocation of carbon-free attributes from the Diablo Canyon extension for the calendar years 2025 and 2030? If not, why not? If yes, under what scenarios? We'll be presenting 3 scenarios to you to consider. By way of background, in November 2020, a similar question came before this board. Some of you may recall that, and the board declined to accept the allocation on a split vote, citing concerns over community and customer optics and fear that taking it would somehow extend California's reliance on the plant. That happened anyway, as we will learn more about and why we're having this discussion. Today, 4 years later, the allocation has a different regulatory context and set of conditions than in 2020. So this will all be explained to you as we go through the presentation. I want to level set that we are not talking about an allocation of physical nuclear energy. What we are talking about here is an allocation of attributes. So we start off these presentations with the definition to just ground us in really what the decision is. An allocation is a portion of a larger volume, in this case, nuclear attributes, that are assigned or offered by another party. In our business, some allocations are voluntary, some are not. This one is voluntary. An allocation is not a contract. It is not direct procurement of physical energy or electrons generated by a power plant, okay? So it's a piece of the pie. In our case, a very, very small piece of the pie. An attribute, in our case, is an accounting or reporting value for a unit of energy. In this case, it is carbon-free. So nuclear power has been designated carbon-free by the state of California and other states as well. An attribute is not a unit of physical energy. So some people liken these to RECs. It is essentially how energy is sort of given its attributes from an environmental and other points of view. So it's really what we're talking about here tonight. What this decision is and is not. We're going to focus tonight on the impacts to our agency and our customers, okay? This decision is about whether or not to accept or reject the attributes. It is a decision that affects our power content label, which is a statutorily required notification that we provide every year to our customers. And it is a decision that affects how much we do or do not save in avoided procurement costs. So it has an economic impact, and it also has an impact publicly facing on our power content label. What it's not, as I mentioned just now, it is not about contracting for nuclear power. It is not about adding new energy to the grid. Nothing that we do or that you decide will change anything about what's added to the grid from Diablo Canyon. This is not a decision that impacts state policy or the development of nuclear power in California. Just to give you a sense of the guardrails here and scope rather. So regardless of what we do, acceptance or rejection will have no impact on the extension of Diablo Canyon operations. This has already been approved by the legislature in 2022. Over the next 6 years, Diablo Canyon will continue to run at full capacity. We cannot cause the plant to stop, decrease, or increase operations in any way. As I mentioned before, that ship sailed a couple of years ago. Every customer in our state will start paying for Diablo Canyon power in 2025. So those costs will be socialized across every ratepayer in the state of California. Our decision has no impact on the physical grid, and we will continue to be receiving a resource adequacy allocation as part of Diablo Canyon operations. This reduces our RA obligations. So we do this already as part of our RA compliance. So I'm going to turn this over to Jeremy now, who's our Director of Regulatory Policy, and he's going to walk us through some background here, and then we'll turn to Roy Zhu, who will walk us through the scenarios that we put together for you to make your decision. Okay? To you, Jeremy, and I'll go ahead and advance the slides for you.
Great. Good evening, members of the board. Hopefully everyone can hear me all right. So brief rundown on the history of Diablo Canyon. It is located in San Luis Obispo County, owned and operated by PG&E. Is a large facility, roughly 2 gigawatts of generating capacity, 1 gigawatt per nuclear reactor. Began operation in the mid-80s, and it is currently authorized by the Federal Nuclear Regulatory Commission to operate until later this year and early next year. It's split for the 2 reactors. And as Sean already noted, the continued operation of the plant was given an extension or given the green light by the legislature and by the governor in a prior legislative cycle. Go to the next slide. So to rewind a little bit, back in 2018, PG&E decided to not renew the license to operate the plant and sought for, I guess, a blessing from the Public Utilities Commission to retire the Diablo Canyon resource. At that point in time, the market conditions were quite different. Cost of RA was substantially lower, cost of renewable attributes was substantially lower, and cost of greenhouse gas-free energy was lower. And it just seemed like the forward operating costs for that plant were only escalating. They had found some cracks in some of the cement foundation work. They were going to take substantial amounts of capital investment to shore up. And so it seemed like the prudent thing to do. In 2020, which is on the slide here, but that's when our board had the last conversation around Diablo Canyon and the opportunity to take attributes from Diablo Canyon. And it, at that moment in time, seemed like the plant was headed for retirement, though there were a number of influential op-eds being run, arguing California would be foolish to take this plant offline and so forth. So there was some political murmurings about, is this or is this not going to happen? And of course, in 2020, 2021, 2022, we had very rough fire seasons, hot summers that really strained the capacity overall, the reliability of the electricity grid. And it was really out of those experiences that the legislature and the Newsom administration took pause and reevaluated whether we really should be giving up this 2 gigawatt facility, given the constraints our state is facing. And so the criteria they considered was reliability. It's a large amount of capacity. It's provided 24/7 by this resource, so it would be a noticeable loss to overall RA for the grid. It is greenhouse gas free power. It has other environmental considerations, but it is greenhouse gas free. And so that would be a bit of a potential backslide in terms of state emissions avoidance. There are economic considerations, as I noted, about the continued investment in the plant to keep it running safely. And there was very much a kind of a mix of regulatory and policy and political implications here, but was very much a political conversation. And one other bullet that isn't on here, but within these is really an equity consideration as well, which is that if this plant did retire, especially for the evening periods, the overnight periods, when there isn't solar generating and there's far less renewable supply being provided to the grid, we would be leaning much more heavily on our legacy fleet, our gas resources. And that would drive up emissions, not just for the state, but also in terms of local air quality emissions, especially for a lot of those older gas plants, the ones through cooling plants that typically are in load pockets near urban areas where disadvantaged communities are feeling the direct brunt of those plants being operated. So there is very much an equity consideration here as well. Next slide. So in kind of a nutshell, the legislation directed that PG&E must offer these greenhouse gas-free attributes to all of the CCAs, since they are all helping to pay for this resource for the legislation. If we elect to take these attributes and use them, we then need to disclose that on our power content label. And Roy and his team will get further into what that means. But it's an important consideration. And then finally, if we choose not to use these allocations, there is no secondary market value. We can't turn around and trade that or sell that to someone else. They simply kind of go into a oversupply account and disappear. So it's a really, the way I think about this is a use it or lose it kind of opportunity that we're faced with. Next slide. Okay, looks like I may have controls here.
There we go.
All right, thank you. So Diablo Canyon is a contentious resource in California's electricity mix. Shortly after it was built, it was discovered that it was very close to a number of earthquake faults in the range of 1 to 8 miles away. It is right on the coast. That's done deliberately for cooling reasons. Nuclear plants require a lot of cooling. So having the ocean right nearby to pump water from makes a lot of economic sense, but it creates a real environmental risk in terms of tsunamis, as we've seen with the Fukushima incident. And there's certainly a checkered history, not just with Fukushima, but with other power plants in the past around nuclear that has colored public opinion. And there are very real concerns about things like, what do we do with the waste from these plants? That's been a contentious item for decades now. The majority of the nuclear spent fuel is housed on the same facilities of these nuclear plants because the federal government has not fully established long-term storage for spent nuclear fuel. And it is a security risk as well as an environmental risk consideration. As I noted, they require a lot of water, a lot of cooling. There are concerns about ocean water warming that come with the plant operation. There's also concerns about potential contamination if that cooling system is somehow exposed to some of the radiation from the reactor. And there are other environmental considerations in terms of mining. The uranium that's used to fuel these reactors comes from a number of corners of the earth that are areas where mining and the socioeconomics associated with it and the geopolitics associated with it are quite fraught. Then lastly, costs. These plants are extremely expensive to build, to maintain, and to ultimately decommission. Every little scrap of concrete and steel from this facility is going to have to be properly evaluated and disposed of for any potential irradiation risk. So maybe not as high security as the spent fuel, but even the rebar is going to have a special place where it's stored. So it's very expensive for California. And part of that legislative deal that kept this plant going for another 5 years ponied up a fair amount of money to shore up some of those cracks, as I noted, and other costs to keep this facility running in a safe and reliable manner for that time period. And lastly, is just a reminder that California does have a moratorium on building new nuclear facilities. That has not changed. And that moratorium is contingent upon the federal government implementing long-term storage for radioactive waste from these plants. And that's been on the books since the 70s. Here we are 50 years later, and we still don't have a solution. So I'm not optimistic about a solution coming along in the next 5 years.
Thank you, Jeremy.
We're on to Roy.
Any questions for Jeremy before we move to Roy? Okay, go ahead, Roy. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. Roy, Director of Power Resources.
Senior Director.
Oh, thank you. Great. So I'm going to talk about the two primary impacts to PCE associated with this nuclear allocation. One is on the cost savings, one is on the power content label. Trying to go to the next thing. Sure. Oh, it's working. Okay. So before we get into the impacts, thank you, Sean. Let's talk about the role of carbon-free attributes to portfolio and why do we need it? So we use carbon-free and GHG-free interchangeably. As you recall, the board had approved our new target to meet 100% renewable annually to 2030, which means that prior to 2030, our Eco Plus product will be met with 50%, 40 to 50% carbon-free energy. And that's why we need carbon-free attributes to meet Eco Plus content. And going forward, starting in 2025, we'll also be needing carbon-free attributes to cover line losses, which I'll get into a little bit, for our power content label in order to show zero emissions on our power content label. So these are the primary needs for carbon-free attributes for PCE. And nuclear generation is considered carbon-free, so is large hydro. So both resource types generate carbon-free attributes, which means no emissions on the power content label. And carbon-free attributes from large hydro now are transacting at record high prices and have very limited availability. So all that is to say, accepting the nuclear allocation of the carbon-free attributes from Diablo Canyon, where we reduced the amount of carbon-free attributes PCE currently plans to procure, and thereby lowering the procurement costs and the cost for repairs. So more facts about the allocation. It is a 6-year allocation based on our low share. Our low share is approximately 1.5% of the total allocation. It is a 6-year allocation, and we're seeking board approval consideration on the 6-year allocation authority, but PCE can decide annually whether or not to elect to take the allocation. And that could be based on staff's assessment of our portfolio needs. For example, in 2030, we might be at 100% renewable, so we don't need carbon-free, or decide we don't want to have carbon-free attributes to cover any of our product contents or line losses. Then in that case, we would decide not to take it. So we have some discretion here on an annual basis. And another important fact is that any unallocated or unclaimed allocation would not be reported on any other LSC's power content label. Mainly here, we're talking about PG&E cannot use our unclaimed allocation. Say PC decides in 2026, we decide not to take it. Our portion cannot be claimed by PG&E or be resold by PG&E. In fact, if we decide to take it, we can't resell it either. We just have to use it. So before I get into the impacts of the power content label for 2025, let's look at the power content label for 2022, which is the most recent one we have. I know it's a little small, and I'm going to turn around and look at this one. So as you can see, this is the old version, and the CEC is proposing a new version of this power content label, which I'll get into. On the right side, you'll see a row that's labeled as nuclear. So for now, PCE's nuclear percentage is 0 across all our retail products, and the California average is 9.2%. Right? And in the future, there will be a new column right after our product contents. You'll see Eco Plus, Eco 100, Green Access. So the CEC, the California Energy Commission, is adopting a new rule on power content label to add a new column called total power content. And that will include, that will be a summation of all our retail products plus line losses. And the idea is that we as low-sum entities will have to cover line losses as well. And we plan to cover that with emission-free products, and therefore we need additional greenhouse gas free attributes. So this is just summarizes what I said earlier about the total power content label. It just coincidentally, while this nuclear decision is coming to us, the CEC also decided that they want to change how the power content looks like. So we have this kind of mixed puzzle to solve. In addition to the losses, the CEC also created this oversupply account to store excess resources in addition to our loss adjusted load, meaning that we all the resources we use to serve our retail products plus line losses, if there's anything extra left, we can put in the oversupply account. And one important fact is we LLCs, we don't have a say on how this power content label will look like, which I'll show on the next couple slides. But the key concept here is that we will be able to use the Diablo Canyon nuclear allocation to cover the new line loss requirements, which is about 4%. And this is a way to not having nuclear percentage showing in any of our retail products, which I'll explain later. So just to summarize the options on the table, this lies, there are 3 of them. The first scenario is just maintain status quo. We decide not to take any Diablo Canyon nuclear allocation. Nuclear will remain be 0 across the board on power content label. There will be no economic value realized through avoided cost through this option. So no 0 incremental savings. If we look at option 3 first, which is an all-in option, we can choose to, well, we can choose to take the Diablo Canyon allocation. We have to take either all or nothing. We can't take partial, but we can choose to use all of them or a portion. So option 3 is taking everything, using everything that we get allocated to. And nuclear would show up in both eco plus, based on our current estimate, and total power content column of the PCL, which I'll show a mock PCL in the next couple of slides. So this option will give us the most economic value via avoided costs. Its estimated savings is about $39 million over the 6 years of the allocation period. The middle ground is where we take the full DC allocation, but only use a portion to cover the line loss, as I described on the previous slide, with the remainder sent to the oversupply account, so it wouldn't show up in the Eco Plus retail product column. And this option would realize some economic value, and we estimate that to be about $29 million savings over 6 years. Sorry, this is small again, but the next 3 slides shows the mock power constant label for 2025, which is when the allocation will start. And credit to Shayna here, obviously, for putting this these mock PCLs together for us. So let me point out a few things on this new format. It looks very different from not very different, somewhat different from the one I showed for 2022. First of all, at the very top, you'll see everything is 0. That means that's the emission, pounds per megawatt hour. All our retail products starting 2025 will show 0 emissions, which is quite an accomplishment. And for the status quo option, the highlighted nuclear row will show 0% because we're not taking any nuclear allocation. But also the color coding, which is very hard to see on this screen. The green ones are both renewable and carbon-free resources, which includes large hydro, nuclear, and it's grouped together with solar, wind, geothermal. And then the bottom 3 rows are natural gas, coal, and unspecified power from the market, which is in red. So those are coming with the emissions. And then you also see the total power content that I described earlier to the far right column. This is, again, the sum of all our retail products plus line losses. Okay, so again, this status quo, not taking any Diablo Canyon allocation, no impact to PCL, no incremental savings. This is the middle ground approach. So the difference here compared to the last one is on the nuclear row. There's a 4% nuclear under the total power content, and that is to cover the line losses, estimated line loss. And if the Diablo Canyon allocation is higher than what's required to cover line loss, which we expect to happen, then any excess nuclear will be placed in the oversupplied account, which is not shown here on this slide. It's just an Excel file. Then it will not show up under Eco Plus. So none of our retail products will have any nuclear content, but the total power content for our portfolio and plus loss will have 4%. So this option will generate $29 million saving over 6 years, and the average residential bill savings about $35 over 6 years. And this is the all-in option. And the difference here is, again, under the nuclear row, as you'll see, there's Eco Plus, 2.3% nuclear and 6% total power content nuclear. And this option generates the most saving for us, $39 million over 6 years of what it costs. And that translates into about $48 over the 6 years on residential bill savings. So that's the end of my slide. Sean, you want to take questions or you want to finish it?
Sure, I've got just a couple to wrap up.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll take questions in just a second. So to wrap up here, this is just FYI, public information of the steps in the process. You can see the journey that this discussion has been on. And then should the board decide to go ahead and accept the allocation tonight, then there will be more for us to do in terms of notifications and agreements and such through November and December of this year. A reminder that regardless of what your decision is this evening, all ratepayers in the state of California will begin paying for this Diablo Canyon extension in January 2025. What are other CCAs and load serving entities doing? I'm not going to go through this entire thing other than to say there have been many CCAs that took the allocation previously. We reached out to them to find out what was their experience. Was there a lot of backlash? And there was not, and not a discernible level of opt-outs as a result. So that was sort of good information to have in the background. MCE and AVA just in the last week voted to go ahead and accept the allocation. Sonoma Clean Power has their vote next Thursday, I believe. So here I'm just going to wrap up to kick off the discussion. Just always looking at sort of balancing all the different priorities and considerations here. So on the one hand, as Roy pointed out, a nuclear allocation would help us reach our GHG free goals and save significant money through avoided costs. This is not a revenue generator. This is about saving money on what we spend on procurement each year, which is huge. Current priorities now and into the future include customer affordability, as I mentioned earlier tonight, and expanded renewable power. Both of those things have major budget implications. Multiple CCAs have taken the allocation with no or little impact on reputation or opt-outs. On the other hand, avoided procurement costs are estimated in the tens of millions, as Roy pointed out, only representing about 1 to 2% of our overall budget, the overall procurement budget. So it's a small slice of the allocation of the overall Diablo Canyon, and it has a relatively minor or modest impact on our budget. But, not nothing. The potential for customer savings is relatively minor. And our website, we looked at this because we were concerned about sort of the public domain. We show 623 visits to the power mix page since October of 22. That's where we post the power content label. From last year's power content and email and mailer, only 2% clicked through to look at the full postcard online. So it does not get a lot of daylight or spur much reaction in the public domain. So with that, I will turn it back over to Chair Colson for questions.
Thank you. So, does anyone have questions, comments?
I have a question, just to clarify. So people who have chosen the Eco 100 would still not have nuclear in their portfolio.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Does staff have, we got comments from the CAC about potential conditions related to how the potential savings are used. And I was just curious to hear from staff on an opinion on that and or like, how, maybe just leave it there.
There is the suggestion from the CAC to allocate the savings to support additional program funding. We've also heard some suggestions that it should be carved out to support additional rate savings. You know, there can be many ideas around the table how to use that saved money. I think the thing that we want folks to understand is that it all comes back to the budget and it's all helpful to our customers. At this point, because it is avoided costs, this is not new revenue. And because our programs are very well funded this year for scalability, we are recommending that we would not do a specific carve out, but rather keep it at what it's meant to be, which is avoided procurement costs to help us meet our budget goals.
I think, just to clarify, I think one of your questions was what was staff's opinion on this? And one of our presentations, we presented to the whole staff and we actually did a pulse survey in real time. And I think that's what you were alluding to. And I forget the exact results, Sean, but it was predominantly option 3.
Yep.
Thank you. Very helpful both.
Yes.
Are we only taking questions at this time or are we? All right, I have plenty of comments, not so many with the questions. I want to start by thanking staff for really putting together an even-handed presentation showing very clearly both sides fairly dispassionately in terms of recommendation. I really value that. I have a great deal of personal feeling wrapped up in the topic. But at the end of the night, my personal feeling is set by the wayside and whatever the greater vote is, I acquiesce to in terms of we're a board serving a greater community than personal opinion. So I also want to make that clear. I think that the second I became aware at whatever point in time in my life that Diablo Canyon was built next to however many fault lines, it solidified quickly in my a quintessential bad idea in the scope of human accomplishment. It scares me deeply. I think that the summation at the end that it's a relatively small piece of what we're trying to accomplish for me means that I'd rather retain our good name the way it has been than sell it for a small piece of what is available. And, you know, I think when I joined on 4 years ago, $39 million, considering that a small piece would have been, but here I am today. And I think that as somebody who takes a great deal of pride in working with an organization that is very purely in terms of clean energy, I think that as an average viewer, not being a part of the board, if I were to be one of the ones to stumble upon that product label, or for whatever reason be aware, I might be moved from pride to disappointment to see a nuclear allocation beyond that label. So those are my initial comments, and I'll leave it there.
Yes.
I want to start by thanking our CEO and our staff for the presentation because it's very thorough. And as Director Big Stick mentioned, it's also fairly balanced of the importance of this allocation and the savings that it has, and the possibility of any damage to our reputation. It does have a lot of benefits. I can't look away from the costs that we will be saving. We're not getting any money, but we're saving on our operation cost. It's a 6-year allocation. It can be reviewed each year, so if things change, we can change our minds on to accept it or not. And as for directing what programs, how that money should be, that we're saving, how that money should be spent, I think we have a very good way of dealing with budgets here at TCE. They're very thorough. We can evaluate things year by year. And if we have the funds to extend funding for programs, and we all want more programs, just that we don't know what's going to happen next year. Things could totally get out of whack. And, I mean, we've had a pretty mellow summer, and there's no fires, so hopefully not too many fires. And I think that we could take our time, and it comes down to, as we deal with the budget, we could deal with it each year. So those are my comments, and I'm in favor of option 3.
Yes.
So, I mean, this is not a referendum on nuclear power, but a couple of comments. When I worked for a big traditional utility, we had nuclear plants, and I wasn't part of the nuclear division, but I had crews that serviced those plants. We had 7 units on 3 sites. And there are actuaries in that world who calculate a statistic called deaths per plant operating year. Sounds horrible, but they do. Outside of Knoxville, where I live, we had a 1,000 megawatt nuclear plant and we had a 1,000 megawatt coal plant. In fact, they used the same generator set. One just used a reactor to boil water, and the other used a coal-fired boiler to boil water. On an actuarial basis, the 1,000 megawatt nuclear unit caused 1 death per plant operating year. It also made civilized life possible for about 2 million people. In most years, when they reported the releases of nuclear stuff were so low they were unmeasurable. And years where they were measurable, it was in these infinitesimally small units that I was told were comparable to a dental X-ray. It's from 1,000 megawatt. 1,000 megawatt coal burning plant on an actuarial basis caused 100 deaths per plant operating year because of the stuff that went up the stack, even with modern scrubbers and modern pollution control. And the coal burning plant released 50 pounds of uranium into the atmosphere, because uranium is a naturally occurring trace element in coal. 49 pounds was U-238, but a pound of that was U-235. So thank goodness we're not talking about coal here, because you're talking about something environmentally nasty, it's coal. And if somebody said to me, you've got to live next to a generating plant, but you can pick a nuclear plant or a coal plant, I would pick the nuclear plant 100 times out of 100. So there's a lot of erroneous information in movies and TV shows about nuclear plants. They are hard things to love. I want to tell you, you have to be extremely careful with them, but the regulations today are quite good. But at the end of the day, this is not a referendum on nuclear power, because we're not talking about more nuclear power. The Allocation is going to operate for another 5 years. It's going to energize the grid regardless of what any of us say or do here. The question is, do we want $29 million or $39 million to help our ratepayers? And I think that since, another way to think of the equation is, would we spend $39 million of the ratepayers' money to make a symbolic statement about something that has no effect in the real world? I would not. So yes, we may have some blowback, when people see the word nuclear on their statement, but I think we've got a lot of good rationale for why to do this. And because that plant's going to run anyway, we might as well take the money and use it for the benefit of our ratepayers.
Thank you, Director McKeon.
End of diatribe.
That was a very interesting and articulate. Thank you. Yes.
One question and then comment, and greatly appreciate your perspective always, but especially today, thank you. So would if we decide to go route, 3, would the question would be renewed annually come to the board level or staff level, or is that, to be determined?
Right now, for tonight, what we're asking is if you decide to take it, that it would be for the full 5-year approval. And then staff through our, what Roy and his team do every day in terms of figuring out the portfolio puzzle. We would determine how much, if any of it, we might need each year. We would prefer not to have to come back to the board every single year with everything going on, which is why we're asking for the full 5 or 6 if you do it. But certainly we would report out each year.
Okay. Then, just in terms of comments, for me, I appreciate the perspective. Sounds like Californians are paying for it anyway. We're not, our action is not extending. So like you said, Dr. McCune, this isn't a referendum on nuclear power, which is a whole, another animal, on which I would need a lot more education too, because I've only seen the movies. What it comes down to, I feel like if people have that choice and they see, this really bothers me ethically, I can't do it, then they can move to the Eco 100. So people do have that choice. So it would be good to have that somewhere on the website or, to let people know. But I feel good that individuals can have that choice.
Would you all make a comment about options? Option 1 is status quo, don't take it. 2 is middle ground, 3 is all in. Do you have a sense of where you are?
3.
Director, 3, okay.
Can we hear public comment first? Yeah, I want to take everybody's sort of tone here first, and then we'll take public comment, and then if you want to re-comment after you hear public comment, like questions right now. I just want to make sure. Does anyone else have questions? Yes.
No, I don't. Question.
Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and take questions, then we'll hear public. So question,
I just have a comment.
okay, please feel free.
Sure, I was just gonna say, I think in trying to evaluate the whole thing, one of the concerns that hasn't come up is if the allocation is there, if we don't use it, plant is still operating. By 2030, we anticipate we may not need the power. Things are gonna go online with the grid, we've had delays, but anticipate things will be more up to speed. So what happens? Are we endorsing nuclear power? Are we giving the legislature more of an incentive to say, wow, we put all this money into addressing the cracks in the concrete, we paid all this money, let's go another 10 years. So I think that is one other issue we need to discuss. That's been brought up at the executive committee and this community advisory committee. And I think that's where we make our statement. And we have to send a very strong signal where we stand on this. And it should not be left up to the legislature. It should be left up to all of us to voice very strong opinions. And if we don't, it's our fault.
Dr. Nash?
Thank you. So first of all, apologies for asking for the comment. I just
no,
feeling that there's. So I have 2 questions. One is Director Mackin just referenced it. I read the full transcript of the Community Advisory Committee meeting, at which point, and they discussed a letter that staff was working on. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, because I think that that's exactly the way we should go. So I'm in favor of option 3 with a letter. And also I'm interested in adding some words to another whereas clause to the resolution. And that's from the discussion section that whereas accepting the allocation in the form of carbon-free attributes would not have any impact on the physical grid, that the generation output from Diablo Canyon through 2030, nor the charges that California ratepayers would be assessed starting in January 2025. So that's in the resolution itself.
There are no more questions.
Comment.
Please.
Sure, okay, thank you.
Director Hindi.
Thank you. Thank you, staff, for this report, really very detailed and informative, of course, but also lays out all the scenarios and the cons and the pros, so we could really have an informed decision here. I think for me, this would have been a very easy decision if what we decide today would impact whether the plant operates or not. It would be very easy. We're not gonna contribute, I will not be contributing to the operating of the plant. But given that this is not the case, whether we accept the attributes or we don't, the plant will operate. So I'm leaning towards taking on an option 3, but also what concerns me, similar to what the discussion we had in 2020, how do you protect the brand, right? I mean, this is very important. PC is a brand, and this is what, since its inception, we have been talking about clean energy, renewable energy. So how do we message this properly? In addition to being transparent, right? Also, how do we tell the story, if you will, not necessarily the story, but be clear in our messaging that our decision to take it is not impacting. Most people don't know that, and I probably would not have known that if I'm not sitting on the board, right? So how do we tell that to the public in a way that's easy for them to find? Because at the end of the day, I mean, you look at it, the amount of money that we save, yeah, maybe over the 5 years, it's still a nice amount of money. And especially if we're gonna invest it in programs in our community, especially those who are underserved. So it's not a small amount to say, to forego and say it's irrelevant. So in principle, obviously, I don't want to have anything to do with nuclear, but in this situation, I think it's hard not to accept the option, and especially with the option that we are able to evaluate year by year, and hopefully we get to a point where we will need to have it. So those are my thoughts at this point.
I'm happy to open it up to members of the public. I have a few comments. I'll make it at the end. I believe there might be members of the public that would like to comment. Please, Ms. Gardner, if you'd like to step up to the podium, I think that would be particularly beneficial.
Hi, I'm Valerie Gardner. I'm from Atherton. I know Stacy and Rick DeGolia for a long time. I actually sort of started my climate sort of journey in 2003 when I took an Actera Be the Change course. Coming out there with a lot of enthusiasm. I have 50 solar panels on my house, and I have literally dedicated the last 20 plus years to trying to solve climate change, not just around the margins, but in a scalable, meaningful way. And until about 2010, 2012, I was called the Green Lady in Atherton because I was the one who started our Earth Day events, and we had all these informational things. So I've done a lot of self-education and learning. And these days, I'm sort of more in the fluorescent green spectrum because I have become very pro-nuclear. And it's my feeling about when you sit down and you look at the data, and you look at the facts on nuclear, the more you know, the more you like it. I've heard a lot of stuff. I know this is not a referendum on nuclear, and I'm not gonna make it one, but I've heard a lot of things, even in this very professional setting, that are not accurate about nuclear. Some things that are omitted, that are not stated, like the biggest risk to California's grid is not Diablo Canyon, for which the nuclear table, if it shakes on its platform, will do nothing, but rather the fact that there are gas lines that cross earthquake zones and fractions that could split and would be very disastrous. And I will remind this group that even if we look at an allocation of 30 or 40% gas, California as on large gets 60% of its energy from gas. And we need to solve climate. So I'm gonna probably surprise you by saying, I don't care whether you say you accept this credit or not. Diablo Canyon is running, it is helping us, it is good. And having been now in this sort of nuclear zone for about 15 years, I can say public opinion has never been stronger about nuclear. There's not been a single administration that has been more positive about nuclear than the Biden administration. They just passed the Advance Act. There's so much progress in people's looking at and understanding nuclear that a lot of the old myths and fallacies and taboos and things have really faded. So I actually came because I wanted to just apprise you of some of the recent news that might have escaped your attention in terms of the momentum that is building to embracing nuclear, which is not considered clean. It is clean. If you look at any report, it has the lowest life cycle carbon emissions of any energy source that we have. It's cleaner than wind, it's cleaner than solar. No energy source has zero emissions. Nuclear has the lowest, and it has some of the lowest impacts, and I won't go through it all, but I thought I would just come and apprise you on the momentum towards more public and more corporations and more utilities and more energy buyers than ever looking at nuclear. And you've probably seen the news that just recently Constellation and Microsoft inked a 20-year deal to let Microsoft buy power from a restarted 3 Mile Island reactor. I mean, the low-hanging fruit on low cost and fast, quickly accessible is restarting an existing facility that's been built and paid for and depreciated, and it's just got to be turned back on. That's a low-hanging fruit. During Climate Week, which we're sort of still in, 14 big global banks said they're gonna be funding more nuclear projects. New York State wants to turn Indian Point back on and is talking about whether or not they can do that. Same with Next Era Energy. Tennessee Valley Authority wants to do it. Texas governor has announced a directive to foster nuclear energy. Florida has, Wyoming has, a lot. So I won't go through it all.
We just have time.
Okay,
But
so
what I would suggest is if we conclude, and then Rebecca, my guess is somewhere in the next year or so, we probably need to learn more about what's going on in this one.
I would be happy to answer questions if anybody had them, but I would also say that the question that Director Hindi raised is very important, that it might be a good thing for this group to say, we're following the facts and the data, and we are happy to educate people who have misapprehension or misperceptions to help you understand, and maybe do an asterisk and lead them to an information zone. It could be at the DOE. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
We do have a public comment online.
Yes, please.
Hello, this is Jason Mendelson. I would also request you don't move those. Very close to my house, so thank you for being close by. I had to feed my children. Just, I'm speaking only for myself and not on behalf of the CAC at all, so I want to state that very clearly from Redwood City. I was very proud doing the table and showing off the MIT all these years and where all the stuff comes from. And one of the big questions we got was, well, how are you doing this GHG free or renewable? And to be able to say all these years that we did it without it was a proud piece for me. And I appreciate everything everyone has said here today. But I wanted to point out that one of the things that made me most proud too about PCE was the ambitious goals to be on a 24/7 basis, completely renewable and GHG free in the very near future. And I know that's incredibly difficult to pull off, and we've refined that as we've gone on. But I do think that it was neat that we were pushing that envelope in every way without a nuclear component. I think that was very, very important and ambitious. And whether it's practical or not, or logical or not, and definitely not financially imprudent or not, I enjoyed us being nuclear free this whole time. And I enjoyed the ability to say we were doing that. And I think once you open that box and you set that precedent, understanding that we're not actually taking anything, I think it's very hard to close that and make that argument in the future. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very much.
We have another public comment on.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Tim Smith, representing Save Clean Energy California and Stand Up for Nuclear. I'd like you to strongly encourage you to accept the allocation of power for Diablo Canyon and accept option 3. I also just want to follow up a little bit on the woman from Atherton who was there in person. I was just got back from a nuclear conference in New York City for Climate Week. And I want to say, I literally heard in person in New York, representative of the White House Climate Office in the Julie Kozarowski of the Department of Energy. And they, on behalf of the Biden-Harris administration, they were quite clear that the current administration in Washington is strongly supportive of nuclear and strongly believes that all the existing nuclear fleet we have in the country, including Diablo Canyon, needs to be kept open and reinvested in, and is a necessary part of our clean energy future. And I also, along those lines, think that I would ask that if there is a decision by the board to take a position on what a future extension, to give a recommendation for the legislature, I don't feel that should be taken tonight. I think that is a separate decision. And that needs to, I think there needs to be an opportunity for the public to comment specifically on how they want the board to take that decision separate from accepting the allegation. So I would ask that any board position on Diablo post 2030 not be taken tonight and be put back out for public comment.
Thank you. Yeah, that's not actually on the agenda, so we don't have to worry about that. Thank you. Any other comments?
We did receive 2 public comments via email that you will go ahead and see are at your seats. If you'd like me to go ahead and share them.
All right, I appreciate it. And those will become part of the agenda packet for people when we post, so those will be there.
They're already published online.
Thank you. So I appreciate that. Or take members. Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment. And I think some people have a few things to say. I'll maybe just start off and then we can get everyone rolling here. And I'm going to try to wrap this meeting up by 9, but these are important things, so it's fine to take a little longer, I think. You know, this is not just a US question, it's not a California, it's not a San Mateo question, it's a global question, how we're going to decarbonize the world. And it's going to be very hard to decarbonize the world without nuclear, in my opinion. So, and interestingly, I was in South Carolina not that long ago, and I thought, oh, this has got to be one of these states that's using a lot of coal and, you know, has tons of greenhouse gases. Guess what? They're greener than California. You know why? Because 55% of their energy comes from nuclear. I was shocked to learn that. So, you know, here we think we're so progressive, but there are these states that somehow are doing better than us, but they're relying on other energy sources that we have simply philosophically removed from the conversation in California. So I also know that when we listen to what our constituents, I know I'm knocking on doors right now, and when I talk to every single person, they have 2 concerns: reliability and cost. And Diablo Canyon was kept online by the governor and the legislature for 2 reasons: reliability of the grid and cost. So if we want to sort of, you know, own that, I think it's reasonable to accept this into our portfolio. And also, while it is a tiny little sliver and maybe not that much money, the next item is a huge amount of work with a large amount of machinations for about 1/5 of the amount we're talking about. So when you put it all in perspective, we're doing a huge PPA, investment bankers and lawyers and this and that and selling bonds to save 10 million. And this is 40. So it would, to me, as a fiduciary, be very illogical to do one and not the other. Especially right now when our ratepayers are telling us these are the most important things. Should we decide to take it into our portfolio? I feel so comfortable with our staff having discretion as to how to manage our budget. And it's just, to me, when I think about it, I think about like, you know, when we get money into our general fund budget, like you get a tax, you put on a, you know, sales tax or something. We all say what they're kind of gonna go for, but it all goes into the big pot of the budget of the general fund, and we trust our staffs to make the right decisions. I have full faith in our staff to take this cost savings and convert it into ways that make sense. And it's hard to say we're gonna put 40 million in programs today, because we don't know if we're gonna take all 40 million. So giving them the flexibility to do that, to me, is really critical and important. So I will be supporting option 3 as well. And I really appreciate the CAC's extended discussion and the leadership of that board and their willingness to sort of be open-minded and think from a broader perspective than just say one, more narrow, you know, point of view, which is, do we or do we not like nuclear? It was a very nuanced discussion, and I think they did a wonderful job of handling it. So with that, other questions? Yes, please.
Another comment. I think it's important that we put another perspective on what we're dealing with tonight. We're not here to discuss whether we're in favor or against nuclear power. Some people might be in favor of nuclear power, but have reservations because it's Diablo Canyon and it's had those problems. We can always have a future discussion about whether we're in favor of nuclear power or not. It's come a long way over the years. You may still hate it. We still have waste. But the issue here tonight is Diablo Canyon. It's going to operate whether we take the allocation or not. The decision's been made for us. I think that's a legitimate explanation to offer to the public, that whether we have no choice in the matter. It's a done deal. It's going to go ahead whether we take it or not. Beyond that, we have some sort of imperative voice, either support or favor of nuclear power, but it has nothing to do with this issue tonight on the table.
Thank you. Yes, Stacey. Director Hall.
I'm in favor of option 3. I'll just start with that. I think one way to look at it is that all of our customers are already paying for nuclear with this fee. And so the question is, we're paying for it. Do we get the cost benefit for something we're already paying for? And saying no to that feels like doing a disservice to our customers. And just generally on the topic of nuclear, I think thinking has changed. I think most people understand that solving this climate crisis will need every tool we have at our disposal. Nuclear is a big tool that we could use. $39 million of cost savings can also pay for a lot of tools for our customers. So to me, it's a no-brainer to go with option 3.
Yes, Director Bigson.
Speaking of globally, Fukushima happened a little more than a decade ago. And I think that if this particular plant wasn't directly on fault lines, I maybe would have a very different consideration in terms of what will be my no vote, should the motion be made, as I suspect it will. That having been said, I did want to take a moment to advocate for the letter that the CAC was advocating for, that should we take this allocation, we simultaneously make it clear we are not in favor of Diablo Canyon going past 2030. And I also wanted to make a recommendation for the funds, and the point from Director Medina was well taken, that at the end of the day, it's likely the funds will be used where they're best served. But I thought it might be a nice symbolic gesture if those funds might be allocated specifically for purely clean procurement. And I wanted to put a note in for them.
Thank you. Yes.
I would just say I so appreciate, and I'm very excited to get to go to their meetings now. The CAC and particularly this letter. I would say I love the idea of the added, so I hope maybe you'll make the motion, the added paragraph for the resolution. and, you know, the letter, whatever the messaging, I trust the staff on the messaging for whatever we put on the website, whatever goes out. I wouldn't want to say, so we're gonna take that money, because again, we don't know the exact amount, and we're putting it into programs, but I would say, because it is important to all of us and the CAC, we are taking this step, we are saving money, and with the saved money, you know, we have our priorities, and our priorities are, and then in general, our priorities are the programs and our 24/7 ultimate goal and all of that, cost reduction, reliability, affordability. Just reiterate our priorities without saying, this bucket is going to be spent here, because that's just, you know, that's not gonna make your life any easier. Just allocating that, you know.
Thank you. Yes, Jeff.
I have a long, complicated opinion on nuclear energy's role in our energy future, which I will not share. I will support option 3 because at the end of the day, every dollar we save is a dollar we can spend on meeting our goals.
Thank you. And I think that's a good point though, which is, as I mentioned before, down the road, another day, it might be interesting to have some sort of study session where we just get some more data and information and have a more robust conversation for edification purposes, if nothing else. Yes. That's Dr. Nash.
So two things. One is I'm very interested in learning more about nuclear energy. Remain concerned about Diablo Canyon and the earthquake concerns, and also just the fuel rods, just how are we dealing, how is the country dealing with a lot of these? So I am still in favor of putting together a letter that goes with our decision, and I don't know how that, because
So I'm just gonna suggest something here. I don't want to get the decision muddled up with a letter. I really think it's important to make the decision first. And then we don't even have it on our agenda for a letter. We don't know what it is. We can't, you know, I think dealing with this issue at hand immediately for timing wise would be important. And then I think it's a secondary discussion about, you know, as a board, do we want to send a letter or have an opinion at this point in time for something that's gonna happen 6 years from now from an organization that probably none of us will be sitting on this board. So I'm a little worried about sort of precluding our future people sitting in our seats with a letter from us personally, and I just think we can do it, but today is not the day.
I am having trouble voting yes then.
Okay.
Just so you know, I'm still
just
working it out.
If the letter is not on the agenda, and so you can't, we cannot.
No, I understand that, but is it going to be discussed in the next 6 months, or is it going to be?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay.
And I'll just say
Okay.
that the letter itself, there's a draft of it. It has not gotten much traction from other CCAs in part because it's a timing issue. Because it's not on the radar of the legislature right now. So there are more things to talk about, and we will definitely come back to you.
So we can, back within a few months or 6 months, we can come back on it and hear what the other CCAs are thinking, the legislature. I think it's a broader, bigger question and discussion with more information required, but it's not, I think, our attorney would remind us, you know, it's not, that is not part of the motion in the staff report and the agenda. And so to remand, you know, the public wouldn't be able to comment on that, so we'll come back.
Okay.
That's
so
correct, Chair.
Thank you. I would like to see it discussed. If it's not, another timing is better. That's, not just the 6 months, but, you know,
yeah,
if 2
We can
years is better,
totally
whatever.
do that. Commit.
That is fine, but I would like to have that discussion, and I'm perfectly willing to change my, you know, learn more
Yeah.
about nuclear. And
We will bring it back.
The other piece is I had discussed this decision with our staff, city staff. And one of the things that they were anticipating is that there may be residents asking questions so that they have some sort of information, script, whatever, FAQs that they can provide.
Okay. Wanting to try to get us out of here at a reasonable hour. Would anyone like to make a motion? Yes. Director Clark,
Make a motion to support the scenarios.
thank you. Do I have a second?
With
Yeah, can you?
Oh, with, well, and
With the
with,
addition.
there is, so there were some, yes, could you please read those really quick? I think we're all in agreement with this.
Okay.
Adam just.
They come right out of the CAC. So, or Director Nash, you can read it.
If you like.
Read it again.
Just
Adding, whereas accepting the allocation in the form of carbon-free attributes would not have any impact on the physical grid, the generation output from Diablo Canyon through 2030, nor the charges that the California ratepayers will be assessed starting in January 2025.
And that's fact-based information that you're just asking to be.
Correct.
Okay.
Came straight
Looks
out.
like- looks like,
Very
Director Fung is willing to accept the amendment to the motion. Do I have a second? Okay, sorry, Director McHugh, thank you very much. We'll take a second. May we please have a roll call vote?
San Mateo County. Abstain. San Mateo County. Atherton.
Stacey Miles Holland, yes.
Belmont.
Tom McHugh, aye.
Brisbane.
Colleen Mackin, yes.
Burlingame.
Donna Colson, yes.
Colma.
Bailey Falls, yes.
Daly City.
Maxwell, abstain.
East Palo Alto.
Yes.
Foster City.
Yes.
Half Moon Bay. Hillsborough.
Yes.
Los Baños.
Yes.
Menlo Park.
Yes.
Middlebury.
Aye.
Pacifica.
Nay.
Yes.
Redwood City.
Yes.
San Bruno.
Yes.
San Carlos. San Mateo.
Yes.
South San Francisco. Woodside. Motion passes.
Okay, great, everyone. Thank you for the hard work on that and to the CAC for all their work and evaluation and the staff. Moving on to an item that we have all seen, I think at least once, if not twice. Which is the approval of the execution delivery of a clean energy purchase contract and certain other documents in connection with our CCA funding authority. And I'll turn that over to Nick, please.
Okay, and I am sure everyone would appreciate it if I move quickly, but
Sure.
please jump in if I'm moving too quickly. It's a complicated topic, but it's also been brought to this board before, it's brought to the executive committee 2 weeks ago, it's been brought to the finance committee a couple times. So hopefully people are somewhat familiar, but I'll quickly provide a quick primer on the transaction because it has been some time for some people in this room. A prepay is a financial transaction that's available to tax exempt entities, one of which is a CCA, that would allow us to realize meaningful power procurement cost savings. That savings, the way it's calculated, it's a complicated calculation, but in summary, it's basically based on the difference between taxable rates and tax exempt rates. Taxable rates are typically high, or always higher, mostly higher, say 5%. I'm making up numbers. Tax exempt rates are 4%. That difference of 1% is how we realize savings in this transaction. These transactions have been around for a long time, 30 years. They've been mostly applied to the gas sector. Recently, about 3 years ago, someone came up with a novel idea to apply them to the renewable energy space. And so over the last 3 years, there's been 12 California CCA prepay transactions that have generated cumulatively about $70 million in annual savings. And those transactions are listed in the appendix, but it's many of our peers, CPA, MCE, Silicon Valley, et cetera. The savings, what we're talking about, and I'll get into actual dollars and cents later, but it's about 8 to 12% of the prepay, the annual prepay costs included in the transaction. So I'll walk through what that means because you might say, what does 8 to 12% mean? So I'll hold that thought for a second. And as I mentioned, this was brought to the board in April. So it was that 5 months ago. With a approval to sort of continue looking into this, which we have been doing, and then it was presented to the executive committee 2 weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago, and they recommended approval of the transaction to the board. You may ask what we've been doing over the last 5 months since we presented to you, and I guess this page is my way of patting myself on the back, so I apologize on all the things we've been doing, but I'll be quick since that's probably not what you want to do. But we did engage Goldman Sachs as our prepaid supplier in about June. We ran an RFP, met with 3 big providers, selected them. They've sort of been attached to the hip with us for the last 3 months. We spent a lot of time determining what the optimal structure should be. I won't bore you, but there's various different flavors of this transaction. We decided which PPAs we wanted to include in this transaction, which again, there's many different ways we could have gone. I won't bore you. In the end, we refined the savings, which turned out to be about $5 million a year for the structure as currently contemplated. That number could change, one, based on the markets, but it could also change based on potential movement of which PPAs we include. That is $5 million a year. So it's, you know, if we're using the same 6-year example on the nuclear, that's, you know, $30 million cumulatively. We joined CCCFA, which is a conduit issuer. To be a member, we have to do that to issue the bonds. We've been spending countless hours negotiating. I mean, the documents literally, if I was to print them out, which I don't because we don't want to kill trees, but it would probably be this high. So we've been negotiating all those documents, you know, in full disclosure, there are the 12 CCAs before us. There's a lot of cut and pasting and it's a lot of dupe and revise. So it's not like we're recreating the wheel, but there's some areas we got to sort of focus on. Preparing for post-transaction settlement, and then most important recently is carefully monitoring the markets, which, you know, Marty just asked me, how are the markets? And so we've been carefully watching over the last month and especially over the last week, and so that we're ready to pounce when those markets are in our favor. In the interest of time, this is probably a page you'll all appreciate. I won't spend a lot of time on, but this is all the documents that we're asking approval to sign. They're all necessary to do the transaction. I'm trying to think, again, I want in the spirit, I can answer any questions. You probably don't care as much, but they're all necessary for the transaction to go forward. Markets, this is probably where I want to spend the most time. As I mentioned, the savings are driven by that spread, that example I said of 5 versus 4%. What this graph is what that spread is at 2 points in the yield curve, 5 years and 10 years. So the blue line is 5 years, I guess they're both blue, but the darker blue line is 5 years, the lighter blue is 10 years. That is that 100 basis points that I was using in my example. That's what the number is. And you can see, you know, it peaked in, what is that, around the end of 2023. It's been coming, so that's why there were a lot of prepaids, those 12 that I mentioned by our peers. Unfortunately, the line, as you can see, has come down, and I've sort of blown out on the right side of the graph what it's done since the beginning of the year. So that's year to date. And you'd see, unfortunately, the number has come down. Thankfully, it's kind of plateaued over the last month or two, but the market isn't as favorable as it was back in April when we presented this to you the last time. As a data point, probably the best data point I can tell you is CPA. Just did, that's the last transaction that happened. This is the CCA down in LA. They did a $1.5 billion deal in, I think it was about a month ago. Very successful. Savings were north of 12%. So remember I said the range has been about 8 to 12. It was at the high end of that range. So even despite this line coming down, they were able to achieve a very good savings. Wanted to give you a little color into that transaction, what I think is a good background for what we're looking to do. Their board approved the transaction. I think it was like a Thursday, or maybe it was a Wednesday. They launched the transaction. They announced it the next day. Usually a deal will be in the market for, say, a week or so to give investors the opportunity to decide, do they want to buy it or not? They had such tremendous demand for the transaction. They ended up pricing the deal the next day on a Friday, which is rare in the bond markets, because that spread, that 5 versus 4%, so happened to move that day that it was just advantageous for them to move. And so I give you that example as it pays to be ready. It pays to be ready to pounce the market when it's there and open. And so that's what we're asking to do when I get to the recommendation, is to launch our transaction, to put it into the market. We won't move forward unless it meets our threshold, but we want to at least be ready. And that's what we've been doing for the last 3 or 4 months to get to a position where we can be ready and access it and do a transaction. Transaction economics, just to put some dollars and cents here, as I mentioned, we will be assigning 4 PPAs into this deal. Which 4 is a little debatable. It may be, but probably 4 PPAs. There's a chance it may be 5. That represents 850,000 megawatt hours per year. And that's about 25% of our load in 2024. the cash flows, the energy procurement costs associated with those 4 PPAs is about $50 million. And so we will be realizing about a 10% savings. I'm trying to make just these easy numbers on that $50 million. So that's where that $5 million a year comes from for the next 7 years. To do this transaction, CCCFA is going to have to issue bonds. And there's a schematic that was sent through Peak Advantage that people hopefully have a chance to look. It's also in the appendix. I'm happy to go into the detail, but there is a lot of boxes and moving parts. But basically to do these prepays, CCCFA will need to issue bonds. It's funny, I joke with Goldman, I don't know why they call this a prepay, because when I think of a prepay, someone's prepaying for something. And in this transaction, we're not prepaying anything. And our PPA provider is not getting paid in advance. There are intermediaries, there's boxes in the schematic that are making this happen. That's just kind of funny. I think it's sort of a misnomer. But anyway, to make all this happen, CCCFA will have to issue approximately $1 billion of bonds to realize this sort of tax arbitrage. Goldman Sachs will serve as a book runner on the transaction. We are
Thank you.
Karen Colson, including a woman and minority owned firm as a co-manager on this transaction, which we think is important.
Thank you very much.
So again, sorry for going quickly, but I'm happy to answer any questions at the end. So the recommendation here is getting approval to approve the prepaid transaction. When we met with the Audit and Finance Committee a couple months ago, one of their suggestions or recommendation was to put a little guardrail on the transaction. And so we came up with this minimum savings threshold of 9%, meaning if the savings are less than 9%, we won't do a deal. We won't have board approval to do that. We again hope to get a lot higher than 9%. We're hoping for closer to that 12, but that is at least your comfort that we're not going to be doing quote, quote, a bad deal. Still 9% savings, but we don't want to do something below that. And then to execute this transaction, we need authorization to execute these documents which I've listed there.
Okay.
So sorry for the quickness, but hopefully you appreciate it at 9 o'clock.
We've been through this. Well, I know I've seen it at least 5 times, so I've seen it quite a bit. So thank you, Nick, very, very much. I'm gonna go ahead and open it up for questions that anyone may have or comments. All right, seeing none, I'm gonna ask if no public comment on it. Okay, great. Wow, this is a record. Record time. So if there are no more comments or questions, if anyone would like to make a motion. Thank you very much. We have a motion by Director Fung and a second by Director Medina, by our Vice Chair Medina. May we have a roll call vote, please?
San Mateo County. San Mateo County. Atherton.
Stacey Miles Holland, yes.
John Lodge.
Tom McCune, aye.
Brisbane. Colleen Rapid, yes. Burlington.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, thank you. Sorry.
Homer. Daly City.
Yes.
East Palo Alto,
Yes.
Foster City,
Yes.
Half Moon Bay, Hillsborough,
Yes.
Los Baños,
Yes.
Menlo Park,
Yes.
Millbrae.
Aye.
Pacifica.
Aye.
Portola Valley,
Yes.
Redwood City,
Yes.
San Bruno,
Yes.
San Carlos. San Mateo.
Yes.
South San Francisco.
Woodside, motion passes.
Thank you very much. All right, next item number 9, amendments to PCE operating rules and regulations, policy 16. And this is also something that I think we've all seen 3 or 4 times, had hours and hours of discussion. I just remind everybody.
And you notice that it's the last thing on the agenda.
I did. Notice that some of the people who have the discussion aren't here. Don't. Okay, please, Sean.
All right, I'm gonna be brief here. So just a quick level set on the background. You may recall that in June, the staff brought to you some recommended revisions to the JPA agreement and a number of policies because we wanted to clean up duplication and also bring our policies up to kind of good governance standards and also in alignment with current practice. So at that June meeting, your board approved a number of those items. And then also suggested some additional revisions. So it came back, the JPA agreement, third amended JPA agreement and policy 16 came back in August. You then you adopted a number of additional administrative edits and suggested that there should be some additional modifications in two areas. One, section 3.9.1 of the JPA agreement having to do with officer term limits. And then analogously, section 4A of policy 16, which has to do with officer term limits, and then a couple of other edits. So the JPA agreement had to be resent, so it was sent out again on August 27th for the 30-day statutory requirement. We have received no comments. So this issue also came before the executive committee on September 9th, and they recommended approval by the full board. So just very briefly, I'm going to just run through what the changes are. This is also in your packets shown as red lines if you want further detail. So the one change in the JPA section 3.9.1 is to remove the language having to do with officer term limits, so that will be remanded to policy 16, which is an operating policy of the board. So you'll see that language has been struck from the JPA agreement. Now moving to policy 16, there are three sections of section 4 that have been amended as per directed by the board. The first is officer term limits. So where we landed with this is not entirely different, but it just cleans it up, clarifies. So the chair and the vice chair will be individually elected by the board for up to 2 successive one-year terms. And then there shall be a limit of 2 successive terms held by the chair and the vice chair in the event that that the director is not nominated, or for any other reason, the position will be vacant. The incumbent chair or vice chair may be elected for up to 1 additional year beyond the 2-year term by a majority vote of the board. However, after a break of 1 year, that member could again serve as chair. So what we're really trying to say here is that
Check-offs can't lead.
right. Some shall have 2-year terms. If we really need it and the board deems it necessary, they can vote for a 3rd year. Okay, so that's really the letter of and the spirit of that. So moving on, in policy 16, we added a section that essentially prohibits revolving door employment practices. It's called employment and contracting restrictions. It basically says 3 things. Board members may not be employees of PCE. Once they retire, a board member shall not seek employment within 12 months of their last board meeting. After that, they could. In the event that PCE wants to retain a former board member under contract, it would have to come before the board for approval, no matter what the contract amount. Okay, so that's just putting some guardrails
Just
there.
an example of something like that might be, say, for example, when Pradeep left and then he came back and did a bunch of educational things. It's a lot to ask someone to do tons and tons of work without any compensation. So we might be able to, say, for example, hire somebody like Pradeep to help us with, training our new board and things like that. That would be an example.
Yes.
And that's a consulting role.
It's a consultant role and it would be approved by the board.
Yeah, that would.
Although he's been off for more than 12 months.
Right,
So
right.
you'd be okay.
No, I'm just saying inconvenient.
That answers my question, because when I read that, I said, isn't employment a contract, but you mean not an employment contract?
Right.
Consulting.
So the last amendment is section 4E, board and standing committee attendance procedures. We added this one just to strengthen and make sure that we achieve quorum. So the executive committee, I think it was a former board, basically we decided that there would be, if there are more than 2 unexcused absences, not 3, it was originally written as 3. that staff would reach out to the board member to resolve the participation issue that we're having. If there are further absences beyond that, the board chair could direct the staff to reach out to the city or the county manager and the mayor to request a replacement board representative. Unexcused absence is defined as not having provided written notification prior to the beginning of the meeting. Email or text is fine.
And it can be to Sean or to me.
To the chair or to
you know.
Brianna.
Yeah, or to Brianna would be great. I mean, frankly, even if you just let your neighbor know.
Okay. So here's a summary of the recommendation. Approval of amendments to PCE's operating rules and regulations policy 16, section 4, and an associated amendment to section 3.9.1 of PCE's third amended JPA agreement.
Is there, do we have any comments or questions? Yes.
I just have one question, and this is for policy 16, so have to go around everywhere. The only question is with regard to the absences, if it's actually the mayor, because it doesn't say, it says the city manager and mayor, but if the mayor is the one, I don't know. I don't know if you say and or mayor, or just say and mayor, because that way you're getting the city manager. Anyway, so
Originally,
it's
there
not
was some language in there about and the council, and it was removed because we don't mean this to be a shaming exercise.
Right.
It's really just wanting to fix the problem.
So as long as the city manager is also getting notice with the mayor.
Right, and the mayors rotate, so it would only be like one weird year every now and then where somebody is, oh, you do 2 years. Yeah, we
do one twice.
And just like us, and so we figured the chance would have been the same, but also if it is the mayor, that's fine, like, hello, mayor, you are not coming, but you have to. The idea is that it would just then alert the mayor and the staff person that for whatever reason, they've not been able to make the meetings. And we really need we need to have quorum, so just maybe appoint somebody else. If you really have an interest in it.
Yeah.
Or conflict, some people just have conflicting meetings.
Okay.
Yes, Director Conti.
Gonna first apologize to Foster, getting out of here early. The proposed changes are fine, because we've already had that robust discussion at the executive board. Did a little bit more thinking after reading through the entire policy 16, and it's not the part that is currently under modification, it's the part that has not been modified, but it's also part of policy 16, where the chair gets to appoint a nomination committee to seek out potential successor for the chair and vice chair position. Just kind of share that experience a little bit. Because Jeff, myself, and Colleen was fortunate enough to be part of that nomination committee previously. And that is a committee that has quite a bit of flexibility in terms of its discretion and its power. And I understand the justification and the benefit of it on an organization that is relatively young, and that we want to make sure that we got strong leadership and bring this organization forward. And I think, to a certain extent, this organization now is very much staff driven, more mature, we're more successful, we're more stable. Perhaps we can look at the possibility of bringing a little bit more maturity to some of these rules as to how chair and vice chairs is rather than having a nomination committee, perhaps, for that particular time within that year. I'm going to use the City Selections Committee as an example. City Selections Committee as an example, where if there is an opening, then those who wants to apply for that particular opening can put in your letter of interest within the certain opening period.
Right.
For example, in this case would be the board clerk, for example. And then they accept these willing leaders who want to throw their hand in the ring. And then the full board will get to evaluate all these letters of interest. And in the end, the full board gets to vote on who is going to serve as the next chair or vice chair, for example. Instead of having a nomination committee that essentially screen
So
and potentially, you know,
maybe just a little background, having served on that nominating committee for a few times. Unlike the council of cities where we have 120 elected officials, many of whom are vying for, you know, extra work. This board is a busy board, and so when you say, hey, raise your hand, our past experience has been no one raises their hand. So having a nominating committee of trusted senior leaders, and I'm happy, I mean, you know, when the chair does it, the only awkward year is that second year, where, you know, because the first year someone else put the thing in, you get in, then the second year, and we, you know, unless somebody's, I suppose, doing just the horrendous job, then, you know, most likely it's a smooth transition to a second year, and then we've sort of solved it, and then at that point, there's new people coming on. But the issue has been that the nominating committee has had to make, I mean, I've had to make, you know, half a dozen phone calls sometimes.
just to get people.
Just to get people to
Yeah.
say, hey, you know, could you
Do this?
work it is, and so my one concern is that it's just such a smaller group of people who do it, that sometimes you do need that nominating committee to work with this. The nominating committee works with the staff, right? So Sean, to some degree, right? I mean, just calls and says, you know, like, who's showing up at meetings? Does everybody come? Like, I may not know if you're on the executive committee, if you're
Serve on committees.
yes, like, is this person saying they want to do it, but they miss half the meetings of what they're supposed to serve on? So we look to staff to sort of say, hey, give us a little guidance. We might need to look at things like, I really want someone on, but their city term limits out, you know, the next year. So putting them on, but they're not going to be able to be on this next year because they just can't run. Has been like another little minor complication. Frankly, your city's, you know, I think perfect example of how it makes it hard. Like, so, you know, there's just so many complicating kind of factors in it all that that's why the nominating committee has sort of been there to take a lot of the work off Brianna and off staff to do a little bit of that footwork. And it's a lot more compelling when I call you and ask you 1,000 times if you'll please consider doing the job. And at the same time, you're sort of working. I call Adam and I talk to Adam and I'm like, do you want to do this or that? Or where do you want to be on? What are you going to do? I kind of call everybody. My job, or when I was on nominating committee, I sort of checked in with everyone to say, hey, kind of what do you want to do? And then, for example, Adam and I had a long conversation. He's like, I'm not available for the executive committee. I just have too many complex work, but I will do special committee work. So that's kind of why we've had it, just to sort of help facilitate filling in all the roles in a way that is not requiring Sean to have to, and the staff to have to spend hours and hours and hours trying to do. But that it doesn't mean it's the right way or the wrong way. I think you make an interesting suggestion. I'd be open to trying it if we want. It's just, Brianna's not going to sit down and call everybody and ask them to be on board.
That's not my expectation, because, you know, I still remember the discussion, a very robust discussion during the evening meeting. And part of the discussion that I still remember was, you know, someone that's been in that chair for a while. It's difficult, sometimes intimidating, for someone else to come up and say, you know, perhaps I can see myself sitting in that chair.
Right, well, and that's why we said 2 years.
Exactly, so, and I get that. And with a nomination committee that the chair appoints, so I'm trying to get at.
Well, the vice chair can appoint it, or we can, you know,
But that's even.
Well, you can, I mean, there's no way to get around it.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to get at is having that nomination committee sort of becoming a almost barrier from someone to look as, oh, I did not, like, for example, if someone wants to step up and want to be a chair, I have to convince the nomination committee, which is a much smaller board.
No, you don't. You don't have to. Anyone can be nominated from the floor, including themselves. And in fact, when I ran, somebody was nominated themselves to run against me when I was vice chair. You can nominate from, I'm just trying to make the procedures clear. You
Right.
can nominate from the floor. And, you know, and even like, you can nominate from the
Because
floor.
right now, as it's written, if the nomination committee does not sponsor that person,
No, I don't think that's the,
There's nominations from the floor.
the one that's been
Yeah,
nominated from the floor.
If I may,
Yes, please.
the nomination committee at the beginning of the meeting says these are the nominees, and then it's open up to the board for the board to say, or anybody to say.
law nomination at a full board vote.
Right. My comment now is perhaps this isn't on our agenda to talk about that one piece and to have to do that at another time, but to go forward with this right now, we could probably go back and talk to the executive committee and go ahead and do that. I see what your concern is. When I first got on PCE, as I was just trying to learn about how it all works, I kind of stayed in the shadows a little bit, just kind of seeing how it was going, and it's like nominating committee, and I was like, all right, whatever, you know? But I mean, this is a great board, and our staff is really leading us now, where before it was a little different. So my suggestion is I understand and I could support that, but I think maybe we have a discussion separately than what we're doing tonight, because this is something that already got baked. And let's go ahead and get ready for that next.
I have no problem, you know,
Okay.
with the changes that is currently being proposed. I just thought this is an opportunity for that discussion, if we can bring it back.
Yeah, we
I'd
can
be
bring
okay
it, we
with
can
that.
definitely put it on the executive committee agenda, and maybe it's, you know, and we'll think about how that might work. And we can try to figure that out, you know.
We can call it a recruiting committee, and then it goes back to, you know, because that's what it
It's
takes.
really what it is.
It takes phone calls like,
I mean, there's no way, like, I did not raise my hand and go, please go out on an extra 10 hours of work a month, please. David Pine called me and was like, please.
we all knew you.
Colleen, please.
I don't want to prolong the discussion, but I will concur with Director Fung that I think it's a problem with the language that is in here. When you say, well, there could be nominations from the floor, it doesn't say that. It says that the committee shall make a recommendation as who should be chair and vice chair, which alludes to one person. So it's really, the language is not clear. So we can deal with that another time, but I think it's misleading. And in the promotion of real transparency of how this process takes place, we should consider changing that.
So we can just add that, like, and they'll make, the nominating committee will make recommendations, but which will also include any self-nominations or nominations and allow nominations from the floor.
Right.
Which is exactly what's happened in the past, but we'll just codify it.
So what we can do is to bring it to executive committee. It may not be October, but within the next 2 months with proposed revised language. And if the executive committee supports it, then what would happen is it would go on the consent agenda for the next board meeting. The good news is we don't have to send anything out for 30 days. So
That's good.
we will commit to you to do that.
Does that work okay for everybody? And again, I'm not trying to be obstructionist on it. I'm just having done it now for years and years and years and seeing the reality of how it works. It's just a little tiny bit different than council cities. I mean, even council cities, we put out, we need something, and there's 120 people qualified to do it, and one person is that. I mean, it's just a bigger pool, it's a different thing. There is no chair, there's no whatever, it's just it's a little tiny bit different. And so I'm open and we'll bring it back to the executive committee and we can talk about it. But yeah.
Otherwise, I make a motion to support the changes being proposed.
Public
comment?
Yes, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. So does anyone else have comment? Okay, is there any member of the public? Let's call. No, I was public. All right, maybe we have a motion.
Got a second.
And thank you very much, Director Hindi. So we have a motion from Director Fung and a second from Director Hindi. All those in favor? Roll call. Sorry, Winnie. One. You can't do it. You have to do a roll call. Just to clarify, we are moving forward with the proposed changes. As stated, and
then we did receive direction.
And we received direction to consider another alternative way. Okay.
San Mateo County. San Mateo County. Atherton.
Stacey Miles Holland, yes.
Belmont. Thursday, Pauline Mackin, yes. Burlingame.
Yes.
Colma. Daly City.
East Palo Alto,
Yes.
Foster City,
Yes.
Half Moon Bay. Hillsborough. Yes. Livonia.
Yes.
Menlo Park.
Yes.
Millbrae.
Aye.
Pacifica.
Aye.
Portola Valley.
Yes.
Redwood City. San Bruno.
Yes.
San Carlos. San Mateo.
Yes.
San Francisco.
Woodside, motion passes.
Thank you very much. If the new members have reports, yes, Director Biggs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two brief reports. One, our dear friend and colleague Lisa Diaz-Nash has a birthday tomorrow. So if you please wish her a happy birthday if you have occasion to do so. Other report is that this weekend is Fog Fest in Pacifica. Saturday and Sunday, big shindig, lots of music, lots of really good food.
Yes, please.
Very quick comments. Thank you, Chair. First, I just wanted to share my appreciation. The city of San Mateo in its last council meeting approved a GovPV project with PCE for Beresford Park solar carport, and it was really cool for me personally to come to a neighborhood meeting and talk to folks about how the rec center across the street was going to begin to power itself in the not too distant future, and for us to lock in savings for 20 years. Thank you to Peninsula Clean Energy for making that possible. It was also great to see Peninsula Clean Energy at the Caltrain station downtown in San Mateo. We heard about celebrations last meeting, and wow, Caltrain said they got 8,000 RSVPs for the San Mateo celebration. Let's go. It was great. It sure looked like 8,000 people were there, but it was awesome. Thanks to Mark Hirschman and everyone else who was there. I saw a video come out on the PC social, and it was a great time. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
We have two big, large festivals that are happening in Daly City. So the first one is on October 5th. It's the Philippine American History event called Katsayahan sa Daly City. Daly City with one of the largest Filipino communities in the nation. We have a lot of farmers, food, booths and vendors, and that will be at Marchbank Park in Daly City. And then our first ever Top of the Hill Festival that will be happening Saturday, October 19th. And again, we're bringing in all different folks, car shows, live performances, merchants, resource tables, food trucks, beer gardens. So if you all are free on some Saturdays, come on to Daly City.
The only thing I have to say is we have 50 guys from PC. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, please, yeah.
I just want to thank you as well. Thank you for all the effort you guys put into the solar power at Colma. We got it ironed out after all these months and months. So both the police department and at City Hall. So it's like a great save.
So PC made bags for us. We had a smaller celebration. And
But mighty.
it was small but mighty. We had about 200 people in Burlingame. It was get together in Burlingame, and then people took the train to San Mateo, but I had to clean up, so I couldn't come. And then But the funny thing was we had PCE bags and it was like almost a fight broke out for them. And people were like, yes, they wanted them so bad. It's good. Though I will tell you, they are super popular, especially amongst the seniors and the families. They all loved them. And so thank you for doing it. Yeah, thank you for doing it for us and for all the little goodies. We're gonna have an opening of our Caltrain station renovation and I'm gonna need like another 100. Because and it's the best way to talk about PCE. People were like, what? We know PCE is electronic train. This is great. Wow, fantastic. I feel so much better riding a train now. So anyway, it's really good to connect what we do to an actual thing we're doing that people can see.
We also have a new webpage.
Oh, the cookies were so cute. I'm gonna get PCE ones.
There's also a new webpage on our website, celebrating Caltrain and the partnership. It's really great and they're very happy with it. So good cross marketing.
If there are no other comments, then I think we can go ahead and adjourn our meeting. Thanks.